And we're live. What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's having a good Valentine's Saturday. Hope everybody had a safe Friday the 13th. I didn't know it was the 13th until yesterday. I'm like, damn, it's Friday the 13th. Shit. But mine was uneventful. Nothing bad happened that I can remember or think of. So I guess I made it through another Friday the 13th. Let's see here. Clint's in the house. What's up, brother? He made it. What's going on, O'Sheen? What's up, brother? Going good, going good. Ready for another Saturday shine time. Had me a little drinky poo. I ain't had one all day. I'm about out of this, honey. But it's I need to message Mike. Let him know. It's kind of estrifying in the jar and getting a little better as it sits for a while. Sure. Just a second. Let me get a swig in. I have this nightmare where the episode starts and my break is over and I have to go back into the ER and listen to people bitch and moan about their broken bones and horrific. Yeah, I know, man. It's all the hypochondriacs. Every once in a while you get somebody serious in there though, but I can imagine all the hypochondriacs coming in there all the time, just hurt and all the wanting some pain meds or something. You know, it's a lot of that going on. Yeah, I appreciate you here, Patty. And anytime you can spend with us, brother. All right, let's see what O'Sheen. All right, O'Sheen, wait a minute. Hold on. Wait. All right, this one. Learned that 15 to 1 and 20 to 1 is a rule for copper square inches to mash gallons, not height or diameter. All right, we'll have to talk about that in a second. Let me get all these links shared. What's going on, everybody? Let me get these links shared, and then we can dive into that topic. I got to get my link first, so bear with me a second. I'm old and slow. And I got to mute that so I don't have to hear myself twice. It's bad enough listening to myself once. All right, let me get these links out, and we can tackle that question and talk about it. And get into that ratio. I'm not sure about exactly what you're talking about. I'm thinking maybe surface area. Let's see. Jason in the militia posted a picture of a hot plate. I guess he's got set up on a PID. I'm not sure. I have to look into that. It's a power supply for that. I don't know. The vent looked almost like it was a burner for a minute there. It looked this cool looking. All right, let me get these links shared out there, and we can talk about as far as ratio. And I think a lot of the copper discussion kind of becomes more of a moot point when we start adding the mesh, to the vapor path. I will. O'Sheen touched on something. He asked a question. Let me get this shot in. Mentioned something in one of the groups about using multiple pipes versus a single pipe and the flow rate and the area and all that. We talked about that, but I guess I didn't. When I talk about putting mesh in the vapor path, this is on 1.5 to 2-inch line that we're talking, right? So it's a pretty good size, line. Loosely rolled copper mesh put in that line really doesn't have a lot of restriction, and it's not going to cause a lot of restrictive back pressure. That putting it in a smaller inch, 5/8, 3/4, half, 3/8, it's just no. When you put it in a smaller diameter, it will cause back pressure and it will cause some issues. And that link I'm sharing is me with a big jar, man. Lord, let me make a new one. Oh, that's terrible. I can't share that in too many places. All right, let me. And I'll show you this one here like that. Yeah, it'd be better. That big jar right there on DIY. That's on my page, so it won't hurt. And if you hear Ann in the background cackling, she's watching her favorite sitcom. It's a funny one. I hope everybody's having a good weekend. But anyway, yeah, we're talking about loosely rolled mesh put in a pretty large diameter line. So you don't get a lot of restrictive back pressure from that. There was some discussion on adequacy and sizes of a line coming off, like a 55-gallon drum or a 50-gallon drum type steel. And even though the 1.5 or 2-inch ferrules coming off that, 2-inch preferable, probably slightly inadequate, but still going to have a good vapor flow coming out of there for a 55. I've seen 55s being fed into 5/8 an inch, right? And that's just way undersized. And when we talk about back pressure, when you start developing a lot of back pressure, you get an issue where it's tough to control the temperature, because as the pressure increases, the temperature increases, and it's harder to keep that temp down. Once you get more pressure, the temp tends to go up, and it's a little harder to regulate once you got that pressure, right? And so if you want to regulate the temperature, we want to kind of keep it down, but at the same time, we want to be able to balance it. And when you get that pressure building, more pressure, the more the more heat involved, and it goes up. Even though you have the heat turned on the same on the burner, if you increase that pressure, it automatically drives the temperature up, just because you increased the pressure and you didn't change the temperature right on the burner. So just the pressure increase will increase the temperature just by increasing that pressure. So that's what we're talking about when that happens. So anytime you get that small, that's why a lot of these steels, when I say, it's kind of undersized on the outlets, I've seen, 20-gallon steels, 20-gallon steels going into 1/2-inch line. And it's just creating back pressure, and it's undersized. It's really, you need at least 5/8 to an inch on those. And that's still a little inadequate, but that's why I really like the 1.5 or the 2-inch spools and ferrules coming off these Bevers and other steels that we have, and a proper lin arm, right? The proper size large cap with a pretty large diameter feeding into the cap, and a lin arm that tapers, that starts pretty large and tapers down smaller. That's important for creating vapor velocity, to increase the vapor as it enters the worm, and give it some oomph and speed to go through the worm, instead of just having it dwell. Wow, they didn't hardly let me share any. Wow, that was way less than I'm usually able to share. What the hell? Come on, Facebook. Jeez, oh Pete, man, I didn't get to share those to half the groups I normally do. So I'll have to add those at 9. So remind me, and I'll go back in at 9. And wow, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. Damn, that's how many did I get to share to? That many. They've been letting me do 16, 18 sometimes. Now it's look like about 8. That's crazy. Do better, Facebook. So let's see here. Learned that 15 to 1 or 20 to 1 is a rule for copper square inches to mash gallons, not height to diameter or of the column. So we're talking about the pot or the worm, just the vapor path in general. What's going on, Steven? Good to see you, brother. What's up, Mike? How's it going, my friend? Tanner's in the house. What's up, brother? Off in the house. Will Distilling Johnny Walker Black Label improve the proof? And are there any heads in that? There's always going to be some heads in it. Sure. We found that they're going to be found in decreasing amounts all the way through the distillate. But if you do distill that Johnny Walker, you're going to lose a lot of the characteristics that the barrel added. So you're going to lose a lot of that, not all, but you will lose a lot of that smoky aged goodness and flavor that the barrel added. But yeah, it will increase the proof, but I can't say that it will make it better. But it will increase the proof. But you're going to lose, like I said, you're going to lose a lot of that character in barrel. So I mean, it'd be cool to try, and see what the result you get. But yeah, you're going to lose quite a bit of your barrel flavor. It will come out clear, more than likely. Going to come out pretty much clear, maybe slightly yellow, but clear. Especially if you proof it down. Now you need to proof it down to less than 80 proof before you run it. That's just a safety precaution before you put it in the steel. That way we don't have really high chances of ignition, right? Or any leaks igniting. A lot of people will see that at room temperature, less than 80 proof will not generally light on fire easily. So a lot of people check proof that way. But as it gets hotter, that limit drops. So at room temperatures, 70, 80 is about the cutoff where it won't light readily. But if you increase the temperature, 40 to 60 isn't a problem, as the temperature increases. So you have to be careful and definitely want to proof it down below 80. I'd go to 60 or so. If it's 100, maybe just a little under half, I'd go 3/4 of a bottle of water to a bottle of Jimmy Walker, and that'll give you, probably about 70, 75 or so, 70 proof or so, and that'd be fine. But yeah, Johnny Walker, it's going to lose some character. What's going on, Silver King? Good to see you, my man. I can barely see these logos. I like that pirate. It's awesome looking, bro. I like it. Have to get my little magnifying glass out to see those little icons are so small. Are there any? Yeah. You're going to find heads. And what I was talking about earlier, when the heads generally come off, the 4 shots are the biggest worry, right? 4 shots of the methanol, the blind stuff. You have to really concentrate those. So we don't worry about much about those, but we do. The first little bit comes off, we pitch because of that. Then come the heads, the ethyl acetate, the acetaldehydes, all that. That's not going to kill you. It's the hangover, right? Those are the things that tend to contribute to hangover, as well as sugars. High sugars, drinking mixed drinks with lots of sugar and alcohol, mixing the sugar and alcohol together can help definitely with the hangovers as well. But having a lot of heads will definitely give you some hangovers. Now we know that we've talked in the past about when we age in the barrels that we do sneak a little bit into the heads to get that esterification. We sneak a little bit into the tails on each side, not the high heads where it's mostly acetone and horrible flavor, but lower heads real close to the heart. And in the higher tails close to the heart, we kind of sneak into those a little bit. So those esters and oils and the alcohol can all work together, and the acids involved to esterify into some pretty interesting flavors. Now, as you learn to make cuts, there might be some little spots of esters in the middle of those heads that come off below the acetone that you can get some pretty good floral notes. But it's really, you have to be really have a good nose for it and a lot of experience, and that will come with a lot of time and experience, and you'll pick up on those as it's coming off. So if you have, while you're through your heads, if you use smaller collection jars to try to help isolate those, it will help, and it'll help you learn about where those are, and they'll happen at different times in the heads, and some distillates won't have it at all. So some of your brandies will have it. Some of your grains may not, but it's a little bit more noted in the brandies. And it too, when we had Alan on here, we talked about stressing yeast intentionally and sometimes using a little higher temperature than the yeast calls for, so we get some more floral notes and a little bit different characteristics of the stress. But that's a little more advanced, and you have to be pretty dialed in to do that. But yeah, I think you're still going to get a little bit of heads, but it's not going to be a lot. It's definitely not going to increase, right? So you're not getting any more than was in that bottle to begin with. So if you pitch the first little bit off, you're definitely going to end up with less heads than was in that bottle. That's a plus. Got your popcorn and whiskey in handy. Awesome, awesome. My question though is, do you know anyone that's used pressure and or vacuum fermentation? I've been researching it. Seems like a lot of potential for unique flavors. Yeah, we talked about that before. And vacuum is one of the biggest things. We talk about how pressure increases temperature. Well, when you create a vacuum, that's the opposite of pressure, right? You're voiding pressure. You're almost negative pressure. You're actually negative pressure, negative atmosphere is what we call. And when you do that, when you lower the boiling point, when you create a vacuum, so you're lowering the boiling point of everything in there. So even though it's an azeotrope, everything in that azeotrope, the boiling point drops, pretty much across the board. And when you're creating things like gins and using botanicals, that's really when those come in very handy. And even I'd say with some of your grains, if you do a lot of on grain fermentation, if you can do on grain with a vacuum, you're definitely going to get more of that flavor from those grains than you would if you were doing it high temperature, because the temperature, kind of destroys a lot of your polyphenols and a lot of your flavonoids and things like that, whereas doing it at a lower temperature, you can maintain a lot of those flavors. So especially in like a gin where all those flavors are critical. Some of the gin makers are now doing, vacuum distillation. I think Mina Pratt was on Still Talking not too long ago, and was, I asked a question there about it, and she's into that as well, and doing a little vacuum distillation and been experimenting with that as well. And I think there's back when I first started talking about it, I did some research on it. Nobody was doing it except one gin outfit on the East Coast, and it was in the Carolinas. I can't remember; it's been years ago. But I've always been into that, and even vacuum fermentation, just to see how that works and the effects of that. But the vacuum distillation is definitely something that's going to probably you're going to see a lot more of, and it's definitely going to increase some flavors, and it's going to be definitely for gins and things that really rely on a lot of botanicals that kind of, or florals that are both, very sensitive to temperatures, especially the florals. Those are very temperature sensitive, and you start getting high temperatures, they're gone. So you start lowering that boiling point with some vacuum distillation, and you're definitely going to create some interesting flavors for sure. Something we've talked about before, and definitely you're going to see a lot more in the future on. What's going on, Wayne? Good to see you, brother. What are we going to call you? Hard play? Yeah. Play hard. Yeah, that's what we're going to call you. Play hard. Work hard, play hard. That's right. Work hard, make that money, and you can afford to play when you got that money. Yeah, you'll definitely strip some flavor out for sure. Yeah, you're going to strip most all that wood character. Um, I don't, it could be good or bad depending on what you're going to do with it. If you want to strip it out, get rid of some of the heads, and then re-age it, you may end up with something a little better. But you still need a little bit of those heads in there, like I was talking, to give it some character. You don't want to get too clean, because then it just tastes like vodka on oak, and it just won't have much flavor and character. Lots of beer using, yeah. It's definitely a thing in the future, and you're going to see a lot more of it. Beer, another, perfect example. Hops, maintaining a lot of flavors of the hops and the grains that are going into the beer, because this is, it's something that the flavor, you want to maintain that flavor, and it's I've experimented with. I haven't really much in grain, but I have with some wine, and it does help with some of the wines. It's kind of been interesting, and I just do it in these little carny kegs that's got the, like the ones that you do the pop in that's got the vacuum lids, and you can hook a, vacuum line on. And I also got a an attachment for the top of it that goes on a ferrule with a tri clamp. And that's pretty cool. So that helps get a little get a pump and put on it and pull some pressure out of it. It's pretty cool. It's different. What's going on, Mr. Aubrey? Good to see you, brother. How's everything going, my friend? Sub Cave Daddy's in the house. What's going on, brother? Oh yeah, I mean, if you over oak something, yeah, you could redistill it and pull a lot of that oak off, and then try again. Absolutely, or you could just, try to add some more liquor to it, and try to dilute it with more liquor, and proof down liquor and see if that helps. But both methods definitely, that's the beauty of distillation and aging and stuff. Unless you scorch it or just really totally screw it up and maybe get a lot of butyric acids. I saw some questions early in one of the groups about butyric acid and had a vomit odor, and they were asking if it would be okay to run it. No, I would wait. Yeast will kind of consume a lot of that organic acid, and they'll consume some of it over time. A lot of times it will estrify and go away, and sometimes it won't. So, if it's a big batch, it's worth trying to save. I would try to save it. But if it's not, then, unless you got time and patience and just want to put it to the side and let it do its thing and, focus on something else. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, no big loss. You just dump it and try again, right? But when that does happen, try to clean everything, because what happens is a lot of times if you get a high pH, and that high pH, the reason we keep a low pH is the low pH, the acidity helps keep bacteria from forming, and that butyric acid is Clostridium bacteria. And if we keep that acid level low enough, that Clostridium won't have a chance to form and build. But if your pH is up there and it's not acidic, and we try to put too much baking soda in there because we're worried about the pH being too low, which I think is a big mistake. I think people really focus on pH too much, and pH will normally drop during fermentation. So that's a natural process. Don't try to block it. The only time we really want to worry about it is if we're in a long fermentation and we have a low pH, like if we're doing sugar and it's taking a while and the pH is crashed, it's in the twos, it's stressing the yeast, then it's probably a good time to use, you should have used the oyster shells I talk about. But yeah, then it's a good time to probably use some pickling lime or something like that to get your pH up. But watch it. Don't let it get up so high, that it gets into the 7s and 8s, and then all of a sudden it becomes, basic, and bacteria start forming, because then that butyric acid will multiply. The Clostridium will, it's in a lot of things, but with the acid level low, it will keep it kind of killed off. But generally, when you get that, it's either two things. It's either from definitely stressed yeast and high pH, and keep it clean. Clean it up after you get that. Make sure you clean up everything real well. Really hot water works well. Star sand is a good rinse after the hot water. So. Yeah, that's a good thing. And when you redistill it, you can add some tails to it, so you can, maintain, or you can add some backset to it to, add some flavor. There's a lot of things you can do instead of just proofing it down with water and diluting it, to help maintain some, put a new mash with it and just dump that into a new mash and get some flavors right. That I try to do a lot. Instead of, if I'm rerunning something, especially, I try to add something with some flavor in it instead of just adding water. But if you're wanting to take a lot out, water is a good thing to add to it, because it's going to dilute everything, not just the alcohol. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. What's going on, Kevin? Good to see you, brother. Running it. That's good to hear, my friend. What you got running? 4 inch coming off, going into 2. That's good. That works well. Yeah, I see a lot. I see so many steels, man, that are just, 30 gallons going into a 1 inch line. It's like, you definitely should be going into at least inch and a half, 2 inch, tri clamp spool type. And then you can step down once you come out of your thumper going into your worm. You can kind of step it down there and increase your velocity, forcing it through that worm. But coming off the cap, that's putting a lot of pressure directly on your pot, right? Instead on just the whole system, it's putting it directly on the pot. And that's why they taper. A lot of times, I like the steels with the tapered line arm, coming down. It starts big and it tapers down like a big long cone. That's really what you want. It helps create that velocity. And it's kind of like going with a 4 inch to the 2. That's the same principle. It's going larger to smaller, and it increases that pressure, forcing it through there. But you don't want that pressure right on your cap. It's best coming off that cap. And that's why that tapered lid arm is always, they didn't do that just because it was easy to do, because it's really difficult to make that cone and make it come out of a cap, that's a frustum and coming up at an angle. And then you got that cone coming out of that angle. That's a tough cut. It's complex for a steel builder, so that's why you see a lot of caps straight up and down with pipes coming out, because it's a lot easier to do that way. Much, much easier. And I understand time is money. And, and if that's people are fine with that, then that's great. But personally, I prefer the frustum coming up at an angle, like the old time caps, and then the tapered lin arm. But it's going to cost you probably more money because it's going to take more time, and time's money. Yeah, in ratio, I've always heard, plate, plate, square inches of plate to, the size, diameter plus the plate times how many to give you an area of contact, right? Surface area. But with the mesh, with that loose fitting mesh in a large diameter, you're forcing all that vapor through it, and that's pretty adequate. It's because the sulfites bond to that pretty readily. They bond to copper quite well. They definitely, it's like almost like a magnet. They're drawn to it, and basically the outer shell, the electrons, they match, they bond together quite well because of the valence of electrons in the outer shell. Don't want to get too complex in chemistry, but that's what's happening. They bond together really well, kind of like H hydrogen with a couple of oxygens, right? That makes a really good bond. So that's they readily give up that extra um, electron and charge, and they bond to it almost like a magnet. So you're doing pressure. Okay, be careful, because as you do the mash, your carbon dioxide is going to build up, and it's also going to build pressure. We don't want, because it'll build up a lot, and it can explode, man. It can make bottles break and plastic fermenters split, because there's quite a bit of pressure that can get involved. But if you have like a loose leaf fitting or an airlock, I guess you can't do it with an airlock or anything, but just be request careful with it, and have some kind of oh, so you have an airlock that will allow it after it gets to a certain psi. Okay, that's good. Yeah, pressure relief valve. Yeah, if you got a pressure relief valve that's set to 10 or 15, that'll be fine, because that's pressure cooker range, right? But I wouldn't go much beyond that unless you want to make a bomb. If put it outside in the woods, away from everything. I've not really researched the pressure. I've done more vacuum. Pennies work, man. Clean the pennies up, and yeah, you can use them. Just make sure it doesn't clog things up, right? Also taking just copper pipe and just cutting off little 1/4 inch sections of it, just and just making what they call a rashing ring, and just piling up the rings just loosely, and just let them bubble up as the distillate. You can put them in your sight glasses or in your lift tubes, right? Your tubes coming out of your column if you got it set up that way. Um, and you can put like a little screening in the bottom. A lot of these gaskets, that tri-clamp gaskets, have screens built into them as well. So anywhere you put that gasket, tri-clamp gasket, it's got a built-in screen, so it's not going to let all that stuff blow it into the boiler, right? And yeah, I mean, people use marbles. They'll use copper, like I say, use copper mesh. You're not mesh, but copper mesh or copper pipe cut into small little rings. Just, I mean, anything, pennies, whatever have you. Just be cautious that they don't stack up and can block, right? But yeah, anything copper that the sulfites will readily bond to it. But the mesh is pretty cheap, and you can get quite a few uses out of it before it just gets totally ruined. Be sure to get the pure copper mesh, though. Don't get the plated steel stuff, because that stuff breaks down. It's nasty. It's horrible, and it won't last a run or two, and it's horrible if you can get it through the first run. I got some, had nightmares with it. It was horrible. But once you get some good pure copper, you can clean it up, put it in a little citric acid and water after each run, and rinse it out real good and let it dry, and reuse it until you get green buildup. When you get the green buildup, you need to put it in that acid and clean it up as best you can. Run the pressure, washer over it or the sprayer on your sink, and clean up all that as best you can, and clean all the green off and oxidation. It's just oxidized copper. But yeah, clean all that off, and you'll be good. Yeah, rashy greens. Yeah. Yeah. Clint's auto correct. It messes up a lot of what he types. It does that for me too. Yeah, yeah, it helps. It definitely helps. What's going on, Tony? Good to see you, brother. Doing good. How about yourself? Let's see how far I'm behind already. Oh, Lord, I'm 15 minutes behind. Let me get through and make sure I welcome everybody. Yeah. Yeah, make sure it's pennies before 64. Yeah, that was, I think that was the year they started using, after that, they started using zinc. Um, and it's copper plated zinc. I don't guess zinc's going to kill you, but in fact, it's a little bit useful as in your fermentations. This is just another thing it's kind of beneficial, but you get it in your vitamins, right? Not like pure zinc metal. You need to do some peach mountain brandy. Awesome. Awesome. Sounds good, brother. Rye and cinnamon. I avoid. You can do rye cinnamon, but when you want to add the cinnamon is after fermentation, right? You don't want to ferment with it because it'll stress the yeast. And I mean, if you get it dialed in and you want to try to use the yeast to try to stress, or I'm sorry, use the cinnamon to try to stress the yeast to get a specific congener or ester off of it, that might be something you could play with. So I'm not going to say no, it's wrong, it's horrible, but just know that cinnamon will kind of kill and stress the yeast. So let that be known. That way you won't be surprised if you do get some off flavors, because chances are it will create off flavors, but there's a chance if you don't use a lot, it could create a good one, come up with something unique. That's something Alan and I talked about before. So, there's certain rules that you shouldn't do, but even those can sometimes be bent, right? But yeah, I mean, there's nothing that says you can't. It's just that just know also that when you use cinnamon in the distillation process, that it's very, very prominent. It carries very well. So a stick or two in a thumper, if you have a large, medium-sized still, is plenty. If you have a small still and you put a bunch of sticks in the thumpers, man, you're going to be drinking some red hot liquor. It will get hot. And that's something that you could probably blend with other liquors to tame, but it might take a bit because it can get really hot. Is it 82 when they went to zinc? No, that's silver. That's 60 something for the silver. Yeah, right. It is 81 or 2 for the copper. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 64 is for the silver, and I think in 64 it was clad. It had copper and some silver in it, but mostly copper by then. Yeah, yeah, it was the 80s. You're right. Cool. I'll check into that. Oh yeah, vacuum distillation is definitely something that's going to be more and more done, and vacuum fermentation. Like Wayne was talking about for beers and stuff. So even with gins and stuff, and they may definitely do that with the vacuum distillation to increase flavors. You're going to see so much more of that in the future and other things. With brandies, it's going to help carry some of your fruit flavors over just as well. So it's expensive though setting up. It's specialized equipment, and just your average craft distiller is probably not going to be able to swing a huge vacuum distillation unless they got some money to spend, or it's on a small scale where it's pretty cheap to do. But it's either the big ones are going to be doing it on a large scale, or it's going to be on a small scale. It's probably going to be tough to do on a middle scale unless you just have a lot of money and don't want to spend a whole lot at it, right? But yeah, you're definitely going to see a lot more of that in the gin industry, and it is very interesting to listen to Mina Pratt talk about it, and something I've dabbled in a little bit, and definitely going to see a lot more of it in the future for sure. No, I don't do that, Tony. I'm sorry, brother, but yeah, we just do a Q&A on here, and yeah, the only time I bring somebody on is I'll bring somebody on as a special guest, a distiller, that like Alan or somebody builder like Wayne or somebody like that. No offense, but just I can't. It's just I try to keep it on here and try to keep this format. No, I don't bring hardly anybody on this. We do the shows on once a week, once a month. We do the shit show where we bring a bunch of people on and we all just sit and talk about anything. And I think if you look on the militia schedule, and yeah, if you went in then just in chat, just say somebody send me a link and we'll get you a link, and you can jump in there with us. And but it's just different shows, different formats, and we do different ways. And this one pretty much just I handle the online thing. Clint and a few others, handle Scott, and a few others handle the chat and questions in the chat and stuff. And we try to just keep it on questions and education, and keep it on the topic and things of that nature. So yeah, you gotta have a pump, a vacuum pump, and those aren't too expensive on the small scale. But you try to take a big huge column and put all that, and try to put a big huge system under pressure and do all that, you're gonna get into some bucks, right? When you get really really big, like some of these big distilleries. So it's cost prohibitive on the large scale for some, but yeah, Tony, definitely on we do it like once a month. We do the shit show. We used to do it every Friday, but Damon's changed up the schedule. He's doing different things. We're doing, got some good shows, coming on. And I enjoy Wayne and Amanda. If he can get her on every Friday once a month, that'd be awesome. But we got a little bit more education stuff doing that way. But yeah, when we do the shit show, we bring in everybody that if you want to get on there, just jump in there and post in the link, that you'd like a link. I'm sorry, post in the chat that you'd like a link, and we'll definitely get you on there, brother. Yeah, it's been around for a little while. Yeah, it's But when I first started talking about it and reading about it and experimenting with it, there wasn't much happening, right? Not a lot of people doing it. But in my research online, I only found one gin distiller, and I think it was in the Carolinas. If I'm north or south, I can't remember which one that was doing it with gin, and nobody else. And then all of a sudden, I think somebody is either in um, California or Colorado, somewhere out west, started doing it, and so you know it's becoming more and more. And I'm not sure how long. I mean, beer people may be doing it for a long time. I didn't really research the fermentation angle on it as much, just the distillation. And then I started experimenting with my wine mashes under vacuum. Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely do your little video. It'd be cool. Yeah, and when you start making wine, I mean, your wine will come out as a sparkling wine until you degas it. When you start making brandies, those fermentations have CO2 in it, right? And that wine will be a sparkling carbonated wine until you degas it. So yeah, most everything you ferment will be bubbly like a beer or sudsy. Yep. No, it doesn't. It's very forgiving. In fact, a lot of people don't realize it, but EC1118 is a champagne yeast, and it prefers temps from 68 to 72 degrees. That's its little sweet spot. But how many people, Alan was talking the other day, he likes running some of these yeasts at higher temps to get some fruity esters. And EC1118 is one of those that people do that often too, and it can handle that. But yeah, it's got a wide range for pH before it stresses. It's got a lot of temp range, and it has a lot of alcohol tolerance. So it's a really good yeast to use. It's a good all around yeast. What's up, Jay Bree? Good to see you, brother. Awesome. Yeah, if you make the video, post it, and DIY Shine is still building, man. Anything, any experiments y'all do, yeah, post them there. As long as it's alcohol related, post that stuff, man. We love all that. That's what we're all about, is experimentation. I mean, Eric and Ayers and I used to do a lot of experimenting and post experimental stuff in there back when I posted a lot of my stills and when I was running. But yeah, we did continuous stills. We did all kinds of different combos and stuff, and there's Scott now. What's up, brother? Good to see you. Good to see you. Not too tardy, just 8:23. I'm 20 minutes behind, so we'll keep moving. Yeah, you almost have to just dilute it. If you get too much cinnamon, you may have to take 5 quarts to 1 quart to dilute it out, because it can get so overbearing, man. And I mean, it may take a lot. You may have to just proof it down and rerun it, which will take some of the cinnamon out. But yeah, it can get very overwhelming. Trust me. Yeah, it'll be good for Mount Brandy peach. Yeah, it's great for fruits. Probably not the best grain, definitely. I mean, thing about EC1118 is it's good at about everything, but probably best at nothing, unless you're doing it for a white grape champagne. And even then, there's Red Star Premier Blanc, which is probably superior and will give you superior flavor notes, but that's what I use. But it's great for just if you wanted to buy one yeast for everything, it'd probably be what you want to use, because you don't want to use daty for your fruits. So, this is better for grains than daty is for fruits, right? So, um, it's a great, if you just want to buy one kind of yeast and use it for everything, it's great for that. and it's good for most everything. Best probably not, but I mean, who wants to buy 20 different yeasts, for each different distillate that you do? A lot of people just not into it that much, right? They're not going to buy a tequila yeast, a blue yeast for the tequilas, or a Premier Blanc for all your light colored fruits, a Premier Rouge for all your darker colored fruits, a Deity for certain grains, and FSI 927 for other grains, and just it's a lot of people love to go down that yeast rabbit hole. I'm kind of one of those guys. I like trying different ones and experimenting with them, but it's if you just want to buy one or two yeast, I'd buy EC 1118 and Deity, and I'd use my Deity for my grain and EC 1118 for my brandies and fruits and wines, and I'd stick with that. And you'd be all right. It's probably the best of both worlds that for just having those two. Both of them are great at what they do, though. And it's great for stuck fermentations, too. So anytime something gets stuck, you need to restart it after you adjust something. EC 1118 is a great jumper. It's because it doesn't have those stresses and limitations that some other, yeast do. It's a very vigorous and hardy yeast. It's a Saccharomyces cerevisiae bayanus is the type of variety species, scientific name for it. Saccharomyces cerevisiae bayanus. What's going on, Hog Runner? Good to see you, brother. Hope you're having a good Saturday night. Glad you're spending it with us, brother. Yeah, peach rye would be interesting. Peach and corn. There's a lot of apple rye. There's a lot of good fruits and grains go together pretty well. You're not going to get too much copper unless you restrict the flow. So that's why we say using that mesh, it gives you so much surface area. It really takes a lot of the equation out. Really, you don't have to crunch numbers anymore or start considering, am I getting enough contact? And really not all your distillates are going to have a lot of sulfides in it, only certain ones. And again, stress can create and increase those. Also, dark fruits, my prunes that I do a lot of plums and my plum wines, it has considerable amount of sulfides in it, just naturally, and dark grapes. So different things will have a little bit more, just basically because of the fruit or vegetable itself or grain itself. But a lot of times too, there's certain stresses that can multiply that and make it more pronounced, hydrogen sulfide. What's going on, Jason? Good to see you, brother. But yeah, using that mesh, it has so much surface area. Really, once you use it, you can discount the rest of it. That's why it's so handy for all stainless setups. I still like having that copper worm. That's good. I don't have it presently, not using it. I have a stainless shotgun that I kind of use a lot, but I'm definitely going with a 5/8 or a 1-inch worm. Probably in a 20 or 30 gallon plastic barrel. And if I could get that 1-inch pretty cheap or free, like some of us out there, I won't mention any names, but Matt gets some of that 1-inch copper coil for free. Man, that's something. He got like $800, $900 for the copper for free. No people in it. And it pays to get on Facebook Marketplace and not be afraid to make offers, right? $83 and 4.2. That shouldn't be any problem. It'll be okay. You're just not going to get a lot. It'd be like distilling a 1040, that finishes dry. So, you got a little bit of alcohol in there, probably less than what a beer would be, so it's going to be okay. Did you try to add some glucose to it to see if the glucose would break down anything and get it going? I mean, 83 and 4.2 is not outside the range for most of your yeast, especially wine yeast. Might be a little high in temp, but that pH should be fine for most everything. You're not even in the threes, so that temperature and pH is probably a little high for like an EC 1118, but it's not going to stress at 83 majorly. It gets run at that a lot. So I'm just wondering if you didn't have some limit dextrins that when you see the hydrometer, when you measure the sugar levels, it doesn't know if those sugars are fermentable or not. It's just measuring the viscosity, right? So it's just measuring how syrupy it is, and that's how much sugar based on how thick and dense and syrupy it is. So the more syrupy, the more sugar, the higher up it floats and shows as a higher gravity. So it doesn't know if it's fermentable or not. So if you didn't get good conversions, a lot of times you've got some what's called limit dextrins, which are oligosaccharides or oligosaccharides that are like 3 to 12 molecules long that the yeast just can't eat, right? So throwing in some glucose might help bust those up a little bit and get you a little bit more. But other than that, you may just have to run it, let it rip, and see what happens. But just run it low and slow. You don't want to run it real hot with a lot of sugars in there because they can scorch easily and burn. So just kind of run it low and slow. But yeah, as long as it had proper nutrients, it's probably just limit dextrins. It's just measuring the sugars that just aren't fermentable. So adding the glucose may help. And time, glucose and time. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to get too much, but there's a point in time when it's just a waste. You're not getting the benefit from it. What's going on, Mash Brothers? Good to see you, brother. They rate these plastics based on ethanol, and as long as it's an ethanol thing, then it's probably going to be okay. You're not going to get a lot of microplastics. The problem is we've got ethyl acetate and acetaldehydes and acetones and things like that in there because we know we got heads all the way through it. And even though in small percentages that's still in there, so those things will break down a lot of plastics. So it's okay for just sending to somebody in the mail and them taking out and pouring it in a jar. If you do that, that's fine. But as far as long-term storage, absolutely not. I would not do that. I wouldn't recommend it at all. But yeah, just put them in small. It'll get you little, half quart jars, pint jars, half pint jars, and whatever size, and store them in that. Once somebody sends you a handshake in a plastic, you can just put it in that jar, label the top, put little painter's tape, and stick it to the lid, and write down who sent it, when you got it, and what it is, and do it that way. But some people, like Mama B gave me some of her poteen in a pouch, and she got her name on it with a little heart and stuff. Yeah, I'm leaving that in the pouch. I'll never, that's just so sentimental and means a lot to me. So no, I'll never take that out of the pouch. I mean, I probably won't drink a lot of it. It's good. But yeah, that's has such a high sentimental value. It'll stay in that pouch just like it is forever. Right. But just, somebody passing a jar at one of the festivals here, take it home with you and passes you a pouch here, or sends you a pouch in the mail and to try something of theirs. Yeah. Just put it in a small jar and try it that way and store it that way for long term. But it's okay, but just make sure that it's intended for alcohol, right? And it's still going to be not something you want to store long term in. But yeah, it works well. It forms to your body real well, doesn't it? Yeah. Clint knows that. Yeah, I agree. Short periods of time. Right, right. But I'll tell you what, I'll send you my address and we'll experiment. You fill up some of them plastic pouches and send it to me, and I'll let you know. How's that? That's the ticket. I'll let you know how it works when I get it. Man. What's going on, Roy? Good to see you, brother. So the 82s were split. Some will have zinc, some won't. Yeah, 81 is what I remember that because that's the year I graduated high school. So, yeah, 81 and 63. Year I was born and the year I graduated high school is the year for silver and the year for copper. Man, it's crazy. And that's easy for me to remember that way, though. That's the way I've always remembered it. Yeah, yeah, that's also good point. Good point, brother. Vacuum. Oh my God, am I that far behind? Jeez, oh Pete, I'm 20 some, not too bad, 20 some minutes. But yeah, diaphragm pump. They make them vacuum pumps. Yeah, they use it a lot for essential oils and stuff. Absolutely, and they use it in the marijuana industry to maintain flavonoids and some of the characters in the cannabinoids and some of those things in the marijuana that they extract. And a lot of times they use alcohol extraction methods, and they use a lot of different extraction methods, CO2 and several others. And yeah, they use vacuum distillation is also utilized in that industry. Got you some of that angel. That's awesome, brother. Yeah, the EC 1118 is a great all around yeast, and Angel Yellow. I'm going to try that in this summer. With I'm going to do a sour mash, and I'm going to use that yellow yeast to convert and and ferment at the same time. So I'm just going to keep adding fresh grains to it, letting it convert those grains right as I go. So that's going to be interesting. It's going to be definitely be different. Definitely a different way of sour mashing, right? So this is with fresh grains, and we know that the yellow label now. Angel Yellow, make sure that you get the yellow label because I didn't know that Angel yeast they had so many. They got a huge variety, just like Red Star, has so many, and Lalvin. So does Angel. Man, they got a ton of different yeast for lots of different things. Not all of them are distillation, right? Some of them are for baking and cooking. So yeah, they definitely do. So make sure you got that yellow label on there. But we know that it helps break down the. We talked about it with Alan and Clint on here, and it's got some kind of cloned koji or some kind of fungus that's also breaking down a lot of these carbs and starches. So very interesting, and I'm going to try to do it with a sour mash. So instead of just using sugar, we're going to keep adding fresh grains and letting it continue to break those downs and see how much alcohol I can continue to get out of it and how much grain I have to take out and replenish. So it's going to be an interesting experiment. Probably you'll do it on a small scale just to try to get ratios of how much need to come out and go back in to keep alcohol production at a decent 105 level. Like most people don't realize commercial distilleries, they'll get a 1060 and they're happy. 3 days fermentation, 1060, boom, out the door, gone. And they don't try to maximize it. They don't try to push it. They don't wait a week or two. They don't try to do 3 pounds of grain per gallon. They get that lower bit. They'll distill it all out, and the way they distill it in some of these, fractional distillation columns and stuff, it's all they need. They can isolate it and get all the ethanol out that they need. So, but it's going to be interesting. I've not tried it yet. A lot of people that have tried it, it's a mixed bag. Some people say they don't like the taste. Other people say it's just fine. They love it. So, I don't know if how it stresses, and what its ranges are. That's something I'm going to be researching. But I bought a brick of it and it's on sale at on Amazon. I think it's like $20, 20, $25 for a brick, 500 gram brick. So I bought a brick of it, and we're gonna tinker with that this spring and summer with the sour mash, and definitely gonna do some all corn stuff with it and see how that works. Definitely interested. It's definitely cold conversion, right? So it'd be cool. But a lot of people are mixed on it. Some people like it, some people don't like it so much, and it's just a mixed bag. Cool, cool. Ginger might be another one of those that has antimicrobial properties. Might want to research that a little bit. And it's after 9:01. Let me give it a couple more minutes, and I can try to send some of these links out. Uh, can't believe I didn't get that many out. That's kind of bizarre that I got that few. Very bizarre. Let's see. I am there. Where's that? Okay, that's this week. Okay. So let me try some of these other ones again and see how that works. Might have to wait a little longer since it's just 9:01. Let me give it 5 more minutes, and then we'll try. Yeah, a lot of people just call it Wile, Yellow Label Angel Yeast. Wile is the acronym that we've given to it. Um, I would say that's probably pretty much it. It maintains a lot of flavor in a lot of the grains or florals or botanicals or whatever you're using. Um, and it does it at a lower temperature. But I think aside from that, I think the benefits, that's pretty much the main benefits is a flavor. It's definitely going to be a lot more work and expense. So it's not something that's cheap or easier. So, but for a lot of gin distillers, they're finding tincture distillers, they're finding, man, it's definitely helping them out a lot. Yeah, they've got a lot of different ones. Yeah, I was looking at that too. They've got some decent distilling yeast for just grain that don't, do the conversion. They're just yeast for whiskeys and stuff. So, yeah, they got a lot of different yeasts out there. They got a lot of product. Definitely something that's a lot of people are going to start incorporating and using more of. You'll hear a lot more about it, other than most of the I've ever heard was the yellow label, right? And then I started researching it, and then I found out, wow, they've got a whole host of yeast. Somebody was asking if this was the yellow label because they weren't getting any kind of conversion out of it, and it had a blue label on it. And I'm like, no, that's got blue on it. What's that? And so I researched the company, and I found out, wow, they've got a shitload. It was just a plain distillers, yeast that didn't have the conversion power in it, or the koji or whatever. Um, clone that they've utilized. It's something, I don't know. It's you know they tend to clone a lot of other technologies. There's just some patented, copyrighted technologies out there that may have gone into that. Alan and us talked about that as well. So who knows? I wouldn't put it past them. Some proprietary stuff sneaking into some of their formulations. They do that often. Prehydrate it. Yep. Interesting. Yeah, Fleischmann's works great for grains. I used Fleischmann's for many, many, many years. Many, many, many years. Before the internet and Amazon and brewing companies everywhere and all the availability was out there. that's basically all we had, was going to, Piggly Wiggly, A&P, Kroger, wherever you shop. And back in the day, and buy the bread, bread yeast. And Fleischmann's was one of the best, that did real well. Saft yeast is good. Um, it's a little bit different variety, but yeah, it was good too. But yeah, Fleischmann's for many, many, many years was my go-to, man. I still have it and still use it from time to time. Good flavor, it's good, and you'd be surprised how many big distillers out there, they don't tell you that. Oh, we have a proprietary yeast. Yeah, it's Fleischmann's, So it's still utilized quite a bit, even in larger commercial operations. It, it just works. It's good flavor, and they don't want to put it out there. Yeah, we're using bread yeast because all the yeast snobs will be like looking down their nose at you, you know. But yeah, I remember when I've advised people at the beginning to use bread yeast, they're like, I can't believe you're telling me bread yeast, and looking down their noses. I'm like, oh, okay. And what distillery do you work? Oh, I'm just a home hobby. Oh, that's what I thought. Okay. You don't know what you're talking about. It's really good. It makes a good whiskey yeast. It's good for what it is, and I mean, some people may not like the flavor, but it originally started out as a distiller's yeast and got into the bread industry. It does well. Basically, it puts off a lot of carbon dioxide, and that's great for bread making because that puts all the little air pockets in your bread and softens it, lightens your bread. That's what they use it for. That's the whole purpose, right? So, yeah. And Al and I touched on that as well. There's a lot of distillers out there that use it commercial. Yeah, so you kind of just pre-cooking it a little bit. Yeah, I guess you can do that. It helps kill off a lot of wild yeast too. That's the main thing. Killing off some bacteria, bird shit, and wild yeast and other things that may be on there. That's important for that, for sure. And so I would recommend doing that. I wouldn't recommend just running corn through a grinder and straight into the vat and not hitting it with any hot water and letting the wild yeast, because you never know what you're going to get with that. It's a mixed bag. Sometimes it's going to be good, most often not. If the cornfield is close to a distillery, probably be excellent. If it's out in the middle of the boonies and wild, and it may not be so good. Daniel, you said the ability to convert starch into sugar in lieu of, yes, that's what it does. It's got this, we think, some kind of cloned koji or some kind of fungus that's in there that helps break down the enzymes like an enzyme would, or helps break down the starches like an enzyme would. So yeah, and that's what it does. And that's, what's amazing is we don't have to gelatinize for it to do it. It can even convert these complex starches, right? Not just regular starches, but complex ones. So you don't even have to gelatinize it, right? So that's crazy. So it's just getting it right out of the grain. So, and I think it was originally formulated for use with rice. And so anybody that makes soju would definitely, or I guess sake too, would benefit greatly from using it. Fleischmann's awesome. It's excellent yeast. Yeah, you'll find them, man. Eventually, you'll find some. You may have to travel a little ways, but yeah, you'll find some, man. And sometimes you can find some really good deals. My buddy Matt, man, he's out there on the West Coast. And he finds some great deals out there, man. It's crazy some of the shit he finds. It's so populated. You got so many. You might have to drive a little ways, but yeah, he finds some pretty killer deals out there. Actually, this yellow label, what you do is like Clint was talking about. You don't have to, but I recommend pouring the hot water, 160 plus degrees, boiling water, 200, whatever. Pour it over and kill everything off. It does. You don't have to gelatinize the corn, but I'm sure it does help kind of break them out a little bit and start the process some. So gives you a little leg up on that, a little start on that. But you let it cool off, and then if you're going to add, if you want to add some barley in there, you don't need to be malted. So you can just go with an unmalted barley, an unmalted rye, unmalted wheat. But again, also note that using malted grains changes the flavor and character of it. So if you want that to maintain that flavor and character, of course you can still use those with it, right? No rules, But yeah, it'll break down that without the first amylase, glucose, alpha being added at all. No beta glucanase, nothing, endogenic from malted grains. Don't need anything. You can just put corn straight in there, let it cool, add that yeast at pitching temps, and it'll start breaking down. Now, it's going to be hard. So hydrometer's out the door, right? Because you don't have any yeast broken down to measure with your hydrometer because it breaks it down and consumes it at the same time, right? These yeast. So they're breaking down these starches and consuming them at the same time. So your hydrometer is out the window. So you're going to have to probably use 2, to 2.5 pounds per gallon. And, so that you've got enough to begin with, right? And after that, just let it do its thing. But it does take longer. It's, you have to be patient with it. But yeah, your hydrometer. So you'll have to go with flavor and taste as well at the end. Because again, the hydrometer, is basically as it creates the starch, breaks down the starch and eats it, creates the alcohol. So you'll never be able to read it with a hydrometer. So that's out the door. So you just have to go on taste. That's why I talk about when we use our hydrometer, always stick your finger in there and taste it. This is beer. It's not going to hurt you. If you're afraid to taste your mast or must or whatever, then you need to clean up your act, because you should be able to drink it as a beer or as a wine, and if you're not creating something that you drink, then you're not going to be creating something that's going to be even that great after distillation. So, but definitely taste it. And once it gets bitter, and drop that hydrometer in there and just get used to that flavor, right? And once you start getting used to it, you become less dependent on that. Yeah, when you add, I saw that, Jason. I just saw your comment on here, and yeah, when you add that baking soda, you create an oxygenation process with that acid and stuff, and it'll oxygenate really heavily, and that's what you're seeing, all that kicking off, and it generally does it really fast, and then it peters out. So what we generally try to do is use what's called crushed oyster shells, and you can get it at the feed store. And it's used for chickens to help supplement their diets, to give them some calcium, in their diets, to help harden their eggs, so it's easier to ship them, less breakage and more money. So it's good for your chickens. So they sell it for that purpose, and it's great for gardening as well. So sometimes you need to up your calcium when your tomatoes start getting spots, right? Same with your peppers and other vegetables and stuff. So but buy them, break them up. They don't have to be the whole shell. Break them up a little bit into, small sizes, gravel size, and clean them up. I boil them, make sure there's no bacteria in them or anything. So boil it and clean them up real good. Let them dry, and wrap them up in some cheesecloth, and make you a little big pouch. Put you a couple big handfuls in there. Make you a big old pouch, tie it up, and throw it in there. At the same time you pitch your yeast. And it won't raise your pH real quickly. Like if you get low and need it raised real quick, best just use pickling lime is probably the best. You don't have the sodium in there that's going to affect your yeast. That sodium that's in your baking soda will kind of affect your yeast a little bit. It's better than low pH, but it still will stress and kill some of your yeast. So best use pickling lime. But if you use these shells, these oyster shells, which is basically calcium carbonate, it won't raise your pH instantly. What happens is, as your fermentation works off and you start getting into the fermentation, organic acids are not natural process, part of the process. They're created during the chemical reaction that's taking place. So you're going to create organic acids, and there's several of them that you create. As that happens, the acidity levels of your mash was going to drop. That's just a natural thing. And it's okay to expect that to happen. In wines, you want it to happen. Actually, I add acid to my wine. It's a combination of acetic acid, malic acid, and tartaric acid. You'll see as a wine, they call it a blended yeast, or a winemaker's acid, or a blended acid. and you definitely want to get an acid level. Lowers the chances of bacteria. You get a lot of fruit. It's a very long-term fermentation, so the chances of building bacteria are greater. So you want to make sure you get that acid level to a certain point, and your most of your yeast are kind of geared to handle that low acidity. But again, once it starts getting into the low threes and twos, yeah, the yeast start stressing because that's a bit much. So if you put those oyster shells in there as it drops in pH and gets more acidic, it'll start dissolving in the calcium carbonate, and it'll neutralize itself a bit. So it'll allow it to stay in the 4 to 5 range where it needs to be, and it won't get too basic and create some bacterial problems like we talked about earlier, with the Clostridium and the butyric acid buildup as a result of that bacteria and things of that nature. But it'll buffer it. It's a buffer. They make a 5.2, comes in a bottle, and it's basically calcium carbonate, and you pay out the ass for it. You can get 14 pounds for $12, so you can buy that bottle for 8, right? Or whatever it costs. Probably, who knows? It might be that much. I've never bought a bottle because I know what it is and how cheaply I can get it in other forms. But yeah, just put those in there. And after you use them, you can reuse them. Just take them out, clean them up, boil them again right before you use them, dry them out. They don't have to be dried, but you can just put them back in your pouch, clean it up, and throw it back in there. And as over time, the acid will eat some of them away, and you can just add more to it as you need to and use it in your gardening too. But it'll prevent your pH crashes if you use them and you have enough, if you have an adequate enough. I don't know if you have 100-gallon ferment, you may need a few big pouches in there. You may need a larger pouch. You can get a little tiny brew bag, and anything that's like a screen mesh bag, little brew bags, anything like that will work fine. Tie, zip top, whatever, as long as it's porous. I just use several wraps of cheesecloth, and it holds it in and just fine. And you're racking it off anyway, so you're not going to get any little calcium carbonate pieces in there when it's time to rack off anyway. So yeah, that works real well. You have to go to the store and buy it or come to a festival. We can't, as one of the rules with Facebook and YouTube and others, we can't talk about anything about selling, and nobody would anyway. But yeah, you got to make it or go to the store and buy it or go to the festivals and meet some people, and that'd probably be another good way to try it. But yeah, if you want to learn how to make it, it's pretty easy to make. What's going on, Bike Boy? Good to see you, brother. How things going over that way? JJ in the Hizzle. What's up, brother? That'll work. That'll be nice. No. Save your silver. Just sell your silver. It's a good time to sell that silver. It's pretty high. A lot of people think it's going to go higher. It might, but I wished I'd have saved mine, because if I had more of it, I'd be selling it right now. Absinthe, that would definitely benefit something like an absinthe, that you have a lot of botanicals and depend on a lot of those heavy flavors. Definitely. And Alan's somebody talked to about absinthe. That's he's big into that, man. He's probably one of the better absinthe makers. Him and trying to think of the guy's name. I can't think of it right now, but they do some reenactments and stuff. And Alan did some reenactments of making some of the absinthe they made in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and they dressed in period and used what was available at the time. And it was awesome, man. It was awesome watching that video, man. I love it. If you don't know it, Alan Bishop, One Piece is at a time distilling. He has let me find out what my little thing. He has a lot of stuff going on. Homestead Distillery in Indiana, but I'm trying to find One Piece at a time distilling, the Alchemist Cabinet. That's what I was trying to look for. Look on YouTube and find him on YouTube and watch some of his videos, man. But it's those period videos are awesome, man. Where they dressed up in period attire and did things with the old school method and with the things that were available back then. Awesome. Definitely it's a must watch. Yeah, it'll shine your silver up. Yeah. Yeah. You don't want all that silver tarnish in there though. Yeah. Yeah, it's a special fungus. Yeah. And yeast also is a fungus too. So it's just a different type of yeast. Uh, but yeah. And aspergillus is just another type of fungi. Yeah. See, Clint's a fun guy. That's what I heard about him. But yeah, but it breaks down. It's something new, and I don't know how new and unique it is, but it's definitely new to the home distilling world. I mean, well, it's not new. It's been out for a few years now. We've been talking about it for a while now, but I've always been kind of skeptical about it. But letting everybody else experiment with it before I did. I didn't want, it's a little bit more expensive yeast too than what I got it. So I got it at a little bit cheaper price. Yeah, bread yeast is great for a lot of things, man. I used it for ages. But now they've got some special yeast. I'll tell you, work hard. They've got some special yeast now that have some glucoamylase in with the yeast that will help finish up some of those unfermentables that we're talking about earlier. Because a lot of your black stat, molasses, and unrefined sugars like that will have some oligosaccharides. That's again the 3 molecule to 12 molecule strings that the yeast. It's not a big complex saccharide like starch, but it's not simple either. Simple meaning something that the yeast can eat, like 1 or 2 molecules, right? A disaccharide or a monosaccharide. So this one has a bunch chained together. So that that mixed with that yeast will help break those down, and it helps it ferment out a little drier, and you get a little more alcohol production out of it. Some people say, you need to watch it if you don't want it to get too dry. So if you want to maintain, some of that sweetness, pull it out early and distill it. Don't let it go. But, keep a watch with your hydrometer. And once it gets down to a certain point, then you can. Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and share the rest of those links now that's got a little time in. So let me do that real quick, see if they're going to let me. Can't believe they limited me that much. So I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more. So we'll see how many they'll let me do, and I'll have to gauge in the future how many they're going to let me do. This varies. It's weird. Sometimes they limit it to 10, 12, sometimes 16, 18. I think that first time I shared those tonight was like 6. There are 8 of them, so that was definitely much less than usual. Kind of strange. Come on, Facebook. You know you love me. Let me post my stuff. I mean, I do it for free. I'm not monetized or anything. I don't ask for nothing. Just let me post it and let people watch it and enjoy it. We know you get money out of it, getting people watching it, getting people logged on. So it should be something that you would love having me share. In fact, you should just share it to all the groups if you want to. Feel free. But we'll see how many more they'll let me share. But it's good information. We're trying to make a safe habit, and it's legal in some states, so it's not something we're promoting that's illegal everywhere. And we're trying to create safe practices so people can have a safe hobby. And did I post that to Mark? So I think I might have posted to Mark. So I hope he didn't have a live on. I didn't. I'm just trying to go through these real quickly. Mark, if you have a live going, I'm sorry, brother. I didn't even notice. I usually, when I do his page, I try to see if he's got a live going or if anybody's got a live going, but I don't want to be rude and post something to their page when So, yeah, they let me do the additional 10. So I think that's more than I originally got to do. So we'll see later on how many they allowed me to do. Okay, so there we go. Got them all shared out. I can close out some of these. All righty. All right, let me get back to this. I'm still behind 20 minutes. Yeah, that's a good deal on molasses. Heck yeah, bro. That's a good deal. Definitely a good deal. Thank you, Brian, for sharing that or proving it. Brian Key, pretty good fella. Good distiller, too, if you don't know him. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, you kill that wild yeast, it becomes a nutrient. Sure. It is, and the thing about flavor and I'll refer to whiskey because that's what a lot of people talk to about. When you're making a whiskey, you really have to influence your white dog, which is basically what comes off the tap, pretty heavily because that's a barrel will add 60 to 80% of the flavor of a whiskey. So a lot of that flavor is strictly coming from the barrel. So that 20 to 40% that you make in that flavor that you get out of your distillate will highly impact the whiskey, and make it yours because 60 to 80% is going to be barrel, right? And that's why a lot of whiskeys taste a lot alike, because they're all using pretty much a similar barrel, similar char, and similar toast. So you can affect it a little bit that way by changing char and toast levels. But for the most part, yeah, that's why a lot of them taste, smoky. Love the flavor, Talking about it makes you want to drink some. But yeah, I love it. Love whiskey and bourbons for that flavor. But again, 68% comes from that barrel. So, what impact you can have on that 20 to 40 will make it unique in your own way. So you really need to put your stamp on that for sure. Right. Yep. Yep. Yeah, it helps keep, even after you rack off, it's still milky, right? And there's still particulate. So when you rack off, you want to be heating that still pretty soon, right? A lot of people rack off to it. Well, I'll heat it up a little bit, and they get around drinking and do something else, do a little Facebook, and lets it sit for an hour, or 3 or 5, and all the time, all those little particulates are settling out and making a little white powder in the bottom of the still. And if you fire that sucker up without stirring it, yeah, you're gonna definitely get some scorching of that stuff. Now, another trick is to use the marbles. What happens is, and again, don't let it sit even if you have marbles in there. But once it heats up and starts to boil, you got all these bubbles coming up, and they hit that marble, and they will keep stuff from dropping and settling during the process, right? During the heat up and stuff. So that's the whole purpose. Once those bubbles start boiling up, the pre-boil and stuff starts agitating a lot of those marbles, stirring them around a little bit, it'll help kick up a lot of that stuff. So a lot of times people use agitators in the commercial industry, or Wayne's got some a forced air thing that will help keep it turbulated at the bottom. I've talked about using magnetic, drives, like a little wheel inside, but magnetic drives on the outside that'll just drive those wheels inside to help it, turn and keep it. Especially like on a submarine pot, you put a couple of wheels on each end of a submarine pot and start that motion early with just little, it's just little motors that have magnets that go around, and inside you'll have a wheel on a spindle that has magnets, and it'll magnetically drive, right? It doesn't have to have a shaft, right, going through it, no penetration through the steel to leak. So, that's my invention. I hope Wayne does that eventually. I've been on to him try that. So one of these days, hopefully we'll have that, and it'll be pretty cool. But yeah, he's got air turbulence, anything to help turbulate. A lot of people use agitators that mount with a tri clamp to the top cape of the steel, and just go in there and just basically have like a same thing we use to mix, right? The mashes and stuff with. Have a little wheel on there that'll just help stir, or a paddle or something. Right. Now, flocculation is also the amount that you'll get in the bottom too. So it's just not how fast it drops out; it's the amount. So a high flocculation can get quite a bit of a yeast bed, and a lot of times for winemakers and stuff that they tend to want a less flocculent, lower flocculent, because they really don't want a lot of yeast flavor and a lot of yeast buildup and stuff. Whereas grains, it's just the opposite. You want to add some of that flavor, but it's just, you're not distilling and you're not going to ferment. I mean, you're not fermenting for long periods of time like you would a wine, right? So if you were to keep that that grain on that grain bed, on that yeast bed for long periods of time, yeah, then it starts to get probably not so flavorful and a lot of yeast impact. But if you could rack that off and store it without that big huge yeast bed, flavor wise, it would probably be a little bit better. Now, some people let theirs age forever, yeast bed and all, and said, man, it's some of the best ever. So, again, no rules, just what you like, and it may work out well with grains like that. But for wines and brandies, it's generally something that they tend to stay away from, and they want a lower flocculent, and there's not a lot of yeast bed. And that's why after a week, they rack it off instantly into another fermenter to get it away from all that. So even if you do have a moderate flocculent yeast, you're still going to rack it and get it away from that. But you want a little bit to carry over to continue the process, fermentation and stuff. You just, and nutrients as well, because there's a lot of nutrients in there. You just don't want that whole big, huge yeast bed right on it the whole time. So that's why they do a secondary fermentation, and sometimes even a third. They'll do that secondary for a few weeks to a month, and then rack it off a third time, and they want even less in it. And that's going to be the long-term storage for a year or two before they bottle it, depending on what it is. Again, with some fruits, you want to drink it fairly fresh up to a year or two, and then it starts to get worse. Whereas a lot of your grapes and some other fruits will tend to improve over many years, right? So it just depends. And there's a huge science into the chemical processes that go on. Maybe someday we can talk a little bit about that, but it's quite complex. But there's a lot of interesting chemical reactions taking place. It's pretty cool. I got mine on Amazon, and no, the package is actually kind of silver white, but there'll be a little yellow spot on, just like a little label on it, on the whole big package, just a small little label. In fact, one moment, I'll pull up my handy dandy Amazon. And I will pull up a picture for you, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So bear with me just 1 second. Awesome. And let me go to here. Okay, here we go. Damn, it's big. I'm glad they did that. Awesome. Awesome. Look at that, man. That's killer. So let me get your question out of the way. Now, you see this little square over here? I guess starter of liquor making to the left of that little yellow square. That's what you're looking for. And sometimes it'll be blue, sometimes it'll be different colors, but that's the yellow that you're looking for when you buy. But if you just go to Amazon and type in yellow label angel yeast, this is what you'll pull up, and it's $39 now. It's 25 when I got it. It was on sale. So from time to time it'll go on sale. But I got mine for 25 bucks. It's normally 40. Yeah. So it's I mean it's not cheap, but it's not like crazy expensive like some of these yeasts either, you know. Some of these yeasts that Clint's using, man, it's pretty expensive, man. They're like $199 for a brick like that. You know, it was crazy. So when you get those, then you definitely need to learn how to propagate your yeast. But I love the new size that we've got there. That's awesome. I'm digging that for sure. That's well shit. I didn't like that. Hell. I've done it now. Oh, we go. We're back. Yeah, so I can adjust that. That's pretty cool. Now, if I could just do the chat, look, it looks bigger to me. Is the chat in the screen? Is it bigger than it used to be for you all? The chat down here in the corner. It looks like it's definitely bigger than it used to be. Maybe they're listening, man. Maybe they're listening. Digging it, like it. All right, we're moving on. The 5.2 stuff is fine. It's just expensive, and it does the same thing as the oyster shells. So save yourself a lot of money. Go to the feed store, buy yourself a bag of crushed oysters, bring it home. Again, you can use the powder in the bottom for your plants. It's great for your tomato plants. Put it in before uh, plant it, and it'll help. What I do when I dig out the ball for my roots and my plant, I'll spread some of that and a few other things around, and kind of blend that in where the roots go, and then I'll put the plant in there and smooth it all over. And of course, with tomatoes, you're pinching off stuff and planting it real deep anyway with a lot of the stalk, because it'll make a lot of root coming out of that stalk. But that's a different show. We'll do a gardening show maybe sometime on here this spring. But yeah, it works. It works quite well, and also um, mix some of the powder up with water for your plants and stuff too. Later on, when you start getting spots, it eats a lot of that calcium up that's in the ground that you started with. Then you just water with it once a month to add supplement it, and it'll keep those spots from forming on your tomatoes and your pepper plants and quite a few other vegetables as well. Yeah, yeah. I mean, chalk is the same thing. It's just this is probably the cheap. Excuse me. Work hard. This is probably the cheapest form that you can get. Buying it this way, unless of course you know a plant or something. Know somebody works at a plant or something like that. But it's real cheap. It's like 40 pounds for 12, 14 bucks. And I mean, it like I said, it doesn't dissolve them fast, so you can use a pouch forever. But if you do a lot, if you do a lot, then you'll go through some, but they'll last you quite some time for that cost. It's very beneficial for the cost benefit. It's a lot cheaper than 5.2 for sure. Uh, yeah, yep. Xylitol. Okay, cool. Now you using that to back sweeten with? Let's see. I think yeah, that's what I was thinking. Let's see. Yeah, that's what I bought. It's kind of this is xylitol. I bought from Rand. She's diabetic. And that's I think that's what you're talking about. It's basically an alcohol or a sugar that is derived from alcohol. Um, and it's a sugar substitute. It's a sweetener, and a lot of people will put it in wines to help back sweeten. I thought that's what you're talking about. Yeah, I use that too for that purpose. It works well, bro. Yeah, JJ's on the ball, man. Yeah, it powders up. Yeah, it doesn't want to dissolve, but yeah, it works well, and you can back sweeten stuff with it pretty well for wines and stuff, and you don't have to worry. It's non fermentable, so you don't necessarily have to use a potassium metabisulfate or the potassium sorbate to kill your yeast off. So you could just use some of that xylitol in there, and the yeast they don't even it's just not in their ballpark. They don't even consume it. They can't. So yeah, the 5.2 works well. Yeah. But yeah, you once you use the oyster shells and boil them up and clean them up, yeah, you won't use that 5.2 anymore. It works. Yep. Scott's using them now. They are. Yeah, definitely use the pickling lime. I mean, there's circumstances where, like these sugar washes or these rum washes or these tequila washes that are just so syrup and sugar heavy, that even the sometimes the shells, oyster shells can't keep up if you don't have enough in there. So sometimes it's hard. You'll get some experience on. Well, I should have added more oyster shells. I'll add next time. I'll add more, but this time I need to add some pickling lime because it's getting into the low threes and high twos, and that's when and let me also note fermentations are going to become acidic. So when your fermentation goes, you want to start at around 5.2, 5.3, 5.4 range. It's not a killer, but you want to start at that pH when you start steeping your grains. You don't want to add it at yeast time. If you can, add your citric acid and get your water to 5.3 before you do your conversions because it helps immensely in the conversions as well, and it'll definitely improve your conversions. So use it in your conversions as well. It's the same thing, same basis in creating a simple syrup, right, from sugar. It helps break that bond. So it's also the acid that you add in the conversion process is going to help break the glycosidic bond between a lot of these long complex starch molecules, right? So the same reason, same purpose. So definitely do that. It'll help your conversions. So a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people adjust their pH after the conversion and right when it's yeast pitching time. And it is a good time to also check, especially when you're doing brandies, you're doing fruits. Some fruits will contain some acid, so it may drop more, and you may have to, add a little pickling lime or something to it. Again, if it's wine, you're not going to want to, but you're not going to use much acid blend because making wine is different. It's just a different bag than even most brandy makers do. Just like the beer process is going to be different than most people that work grains to make whiskeys. So it's a little bit different process, but don't freak out when your pH gets into the fours. Oh my God, I get it back 5.3. You got to keep it at 5.3, and you're adding pickling lime and everything to keep it at 5.3. Don't do that. If it gets to the fours, no problem. High threes, it's not a problem. It's supposed to. So don't overthink it. Don't overdo it. A lot of people do. They spaz and it just and that oxidation too. When you add that like the baking soda, when you added it like a volcano, man, it goes crazy. But when you do that, you're increasing the oxygenation, and when you increase the oxygenation, you're doing two things. You're creating that yeast. It goes back into a breeding cycle, so it's trying to breed more, and it's not eating and consuming and making the alcohol. Is going back into the breed cycle, and you don't want that in the middle of a ferment. And also, more oxygen increases the chances of bacteria forming, right? So, both no buenos, but definitely better than getting a 2.5 pH and just complete stress of yeast and bad flavors and stuck fermentations and bigger problems. So it's the lesser of two evils, but Yeah, yeah, yeah. You want to start your ferments, with a low pH, right? When you convert your starches and that water that you add, to steep or cook your grains, you want it to be at about 5.2 or 3. So you can use your citric acid to get at that point, lemon juice, whatever. It's expensive using lemon juice. The citric acid is cheap, buying it that way. So it's something that you're going to use a lot of. Um, and it's something that you can use in post distillate too. If you want to make some limoncello and you want to bitter it up some and make it sour, you can add some of that citric acid. And it makes things sour. It's used in the food industry all the time to make things tartness, right, and sour. So you just don't want to use too much. Yeah, but yeah, it definitely helps. Are there any pressure buildup in the thumper when using a thumper, or is it just the boiler? No. Yeah. What the thumper creates is called back pressure. So a still without a thumper basically creates this vacuum. It creates a lot of vacuum. It creates a lot of pressure. We've been talking about vacuum too much. It creates a lot of pressure with like boiling water and stuff. So it's going to off gas as it evaporates and boils off. It off gas. All these vapors have to go somewhere. So it's building pressure, right? And this pressure is released and it goes, through a pressure through your cap or through a column or through whatever you have, hopefully through some copper mesh, to help remove some of those sulfites. But it's getting pressurized in that steel in the pot. The smaller the line that you have coming off there, the more pressure is going to build because it can't push it all out, right? So if you have a 2-inch column, you're going to get a certain speed of vapor coming out of there, given the size. Well, let's just say a 20-gallon steel. You're going to get a certain rate at a certain temperature. You're going to get a certain rate of forced vapors being forced out, right, through that 2-inch. Now, the smaller that becomes, the more pressure builds back into your steel, and the higher the pressure is going to be coming out of that, half-inch line or 1-inch line. So, and that's not as favorable because, like we were talking about earlier, it's harder to control your temperature in your steel with that pressure in it. So the larger that line to a point, the better, to use the larger. But then again, you get too big and there's just hardly any pressure at all. And the vapor just kind of going up, and it just, condenses in the cap or whatever, and then falls back down. So it's a proportionate thing. So you need your cap, the size and everything needs to be proportionate to get it to act the same way, given an increase in size of your boiler, right? And even the shape of your boiler. So if you have a fat boiler with a lot more bottom surface area coming in contact with heat, then you're going to have a lot more boiling than if you had a really tall, narrow, rocket type steel that was really tall and skinny. That's going to be different as well. So it will vary considerably. But it's also considered free air because it goes straight up, blows through the worm, and there's nothing holding it back other than just the size of that line. That's the only thing that's restricting the flow is the actual size of the line coming off the steel. Now, when you throw in a thumper, you've got that line it's a closed system because you've got that line going into a thumper that's got a liquid in it, right? Tails, flavors, other things that you charge that thumper with, right? I usually used a lot of tails back in the day. Now we use a lot of flavors and cream corn and other things to get flavors and tails, whatever. Again, no rules, experiment. But you've got that downcomer going into the bottom of this thumper, and it's got this water, or whatever you're infusing in your thumper on it. So tails, flavors, whatever. So now you've got pressure. So it's have to create more pressure in your steel to blow that steam out of that water and up into that chamber, right? So that's created some back pressure and a closed system now. And you've also created a situation that can also cause your steel to implode. It can still implode without the thumper, but once you close that system up, you definitely need to vent that cap or whatever your steel is. You need to create a vent in it. When you're done, you need to open that vent up so it has a free exchange of outside air. That way the inside and outside can regulate the same temperature pretty quickly, and you won't have that huge variance that causes an implosion. So, but yeah, the pressure does originate in the boiler, and adding a thumper increases the pressure. So, good question. Yeah, that would work fine. Yeah, or metal mesh, stainless mesh, whatever. Um, that would work just fine as well. Yeah, anything to put them into. And I mean, hell, you could just put big shells in there for that matter. But the surface area of crushed, smaller ones crushed, again, it's like putting a copper rod instead of copper mesh. So if you take 1 pound of copper mesh and a 1 pound copper rod, you're going to get a huge amount of difference of surface area with that mesh than you are that rod, right? And it's the same with the shells. So if you just using big, huge shells, you're not going to get that surface area contact you really need. Break them up. And I'm not saying powderize them because you don't want that. But, just small peat gravel size or just, half inch, 1 inch little pieces is good. But you don't just need a bunch of huge shells in there. You want to break them up a little bit, but you don't want the powder either. So kind of in between, just coarse. Yeah, you can use Clint's panties. Put them in, or his hose, right? You put them in Clint's hose. That what Clint thought about using his panties and his. Yeah, that's funny. That's hilarious. But yeah, I'm kind of weary about hose. Anything that contains rayons and polyesters and anything cotton, I'm great with. So if you have like cotton socks, that would be fine. Probably not porous enough, but it'd work. Um, brew bags, fine. They're all designed for that. But I don't know. Clint's rayon panties, I don't know. Or his hose, the old lady's hose or something. I don't know about using all that. I'm weary of those polyesters and stuff. Polyesters, that's the ester you don't want in there, right? You don't want that type of esterification. Yeah, and also adjusting your burner, to make it more efficient. Diffuser plates, yep. Yeah, a lot of people use that. Now, be careful with the diffuser plate because you can make it really inefficient, right? And you go through a lot of propane if you really use one that's too large. Best to get a banjo burner that displaces your heat over a large area in small little flames instead of one of those, this is jet, like, in some of those turkey fryers. I call them jet burners. I think that's what they're called. I've always called them that, but I think they might actually term them that. But it's like a cone, focuses all of it on one spot. Those are scorch-o-matics, man. They're great for boiling water. They're excellent for boiling water. They'll get that water boiling quick. They're fast, furious, heat, hot. Man, they'll get the bottom of that thing rolling, bro. It's awesome for boiling water. For distilling, it's horrible because it will scorch like a motherfucker. So definitely do not. If you do have one of those, it's best to use a little diffuser. And when you say that, maybe a pie pan or a cookie sheet or something, in between them just to help diffuse. But again, it makes them pretty inefficient. So you want it to come in contact, so you might need to cut that cookie sheet and make sure it's not the kite that's got the air bake, that it's got a gap in it, because you talk about very inefficient, man. It take a lot of heat, right? Because a lot of it gets lost in that air gap. Make sure it's just a solid sheet, not a gap, and cut it to the bottom of your steel. That way it can come in contact with your steel. A lot of steels will have a rim on the bottom, and they, you couldn't set them on a stove top because they got that rim, and it'd be, the actual bottom of the steel be half inch off the stove top. You're never going to cook it that way. So it's best if you have that flat bottom where the edges are rolled up. But if you do have that ridge, make sure you cut that diffuser so it'll fit up and touch, come into contact with the bottom of your copper or your steel instead of having that big gap, because that's so inefficient. Yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah, and that's another thing you can do. If you got tri clamps, and it's pretty quick and easy to put on once you get to a certain boiling point, 190s. Once a little bit comes off, be careful if you're outside. Not a big problem. If you're inside, be very careful. Those are flammable gases coming off. So get that cap on quick, get it on quick. It's but don't think that you're going to cook off these 4 shots at 170, between 173.1, which is the boiling point of ethanol. Or I think methanol is like 140 some. Yeah, you're not cooking that methanol off at that low temperature. So, like they talk about on the show, it's just not happening. So, that's entertainment. It's not fact. So, don't try that at home. And I'm about staying 20 minutes behind. That's better. Usually I'm 30 or 40, so I'm not doing too bad. Let's see. What's going on, Dale? Good to see you, brother. How things going on down there? Yeah, you got rain too? Yeah, we got some rain up here, man. My day started with a hint of a migraine. A lot of times when we get warmer temperatures and the rain will come and the temp drops, I'll get migraines because I got nerve damage in my neck and some arthritis, and yeah, I'll start feeling that migraine sensation coming on. I was like, man, it's gonna rain today, and Ann's like, I don't know. Let's check the weather, and sure enough, yeah, we have rain coming in. It's not too bad, but yeah, degassing helps a lot, and it helps keep from foaming up. So um, if you're doing grains and stuff, a lot of people degas for wines and stuff. It's good to degas for a lot of things. You don't have to, but it will definitely help prevent puking. Um, but you shouldn't overload your stills to begin with, so you shouldn't have that problem. Yeah, it's double that now, man. 25 on sale now, bro. But you can propagate it, and that's something that Alan and I talked about too. Is I wonder how well it maintains the property of being able to convert. I wonder if that's something that stays with it, like its ability to stay alive and propagate and continue to convert the sugars into alcohol. Will it maintain its ability to also convert those sugars? So we're going to find out this spring and summer. We're going to be able to answer those. We think it will, but I don't know. Yeah, your turkey fryers, they're great for boiling water, man. Everybody says, "Oh, aluminum, you can't use aluminum." Who gives a shit if you're just boiling water, right? Now, it's not something you want to ferment in, and you don't want to distill in it, but boiling water is perfectly fine. Steeping your grain, I'm sure it's just fine. You know, Now, fermenting, probably not, because you're going to get acidic. And once you get acidic, you start getting aluminum ions in the, coming off, and that's not good. That's the biggest negative part of the aluminum is when you start cooking acidic, things in it. A lot of uh, pasta, and stuff. So, the sauces that become acidic with tomatoes and stuff were becoming an issue and getting a lot of ions. And you could actually taste, some people could taste it. And it was leaching a lot of that off. And they found a lot of these old kitchens that used these aluminum pots that cooked a lot of these tomatoes. They were getting pitting, and a lot of the aluminum was coming off in it. And it's a different type of aluminum that's thin. This is now. But no, don't use it with acidic backwashes. Don't use it to distill. Don't use it to ferment. But for boiling your water or steeping your grains is perfectly fine, even at 5.2. So don't worry about that. But over the long haul, yeah, I wouldn't ferment in it. But it's perfectly fine for boiling your water. Your 5.2 pH water is perfectly fine for that. And those boilers are fine for those jet burners are great for that. Set your water up. And they're pretty good little size pot for a lot of people. That's one of the bigger pots they have, unless they go out and buy one of these little, jumbo shrimp. What do they call them? Shrimp boil pots, 10, 20, 30 gallon pots, man, they're huge. I got a 20 gallon, I think 120 quart. It's huge, it's a big, massive, I think it's 30 gallon pot. Yeah. It's massive, and it's got a little strainer in it, and it's used for big shrimp crab boils and stuff. And I bought it at the right time. It's about 50% more now. I got it for under 200, and they're about almost $4 now for the one I got. Yeah, it's crazy. Everybody, yeah, a lot of people use the Blue Hopi. It's really good, and the Ohio Blues real well. Yeah, it's just a different corn. Gives a unique flavor. All the different heirloom corns will have a unique characteristic. But yeah, most everybody's tried everything. Shane, it's really tough to come out with a vegetable or a fruit or something that hadn't been fermented or tried. Um, if they're not using it, there's generally a reason why. But yeah, a lot of those heirloom corns are really good and definitely worth the Ohio Blue. People tend to prefer over the Hopi. But yeah, it's good, sweet. It's good stuff. Now, I haven't tried the Argentine orange. There's an Argentine orange that's supposed to be pretty cool, and the green. Um, what's the green one? Yeah, I can't even remember. Man, my mind. What is the green corn? Damn it. Oaxacan green. Yeah, Oaxacan green. Damn, man, my mind's gone. But yeah, I haven't tried the Oaxacan green, so I definitely want to try that and the orange for sure, Argentine orange. But yeah, definitely everybody should try it. Bloody Butcher, you know, Jimmy Red, all the different heirloom varieties. They can get a little expensive, and you just have to be the judge. Do your what mashes with those, and then do it with the cheap yellow dent, and judge for yourself. Is it worth the additional expense for these heirlooms, or is this yellow dent pretty damn good? I don't know. I mean, most big distilleries tend to think that the yellow dent makes a perfectly fine bourbon and liquor. That's what they've used for ages. But again, we talked about that 20 to 40%, right? That makes yours unique. Using heirloom grains and a combination of these grains can give you that uniqueness. Now, we talked about that with Alan. These days, everybody and their mother has a bourbon out there or a whiskey out there. You're not going to set the world on fire with your iteration of a bourbon or a whiskey. You're just not. A way you can make it more unique is a combination, which is why Alan created this Amanda Palmer corn, which was a combination of a lot of different corns grown into one. So he crossbred all these together, and now it looks a lot like a gem corn, kind of, like a Kentucky gem corn with all the different colors, like a glass corn, but it's not. And very unique, and he came out with that strain, and a lot of people use that. It's excellent. It's great for mixing with other corns and getting a lot of combination of flavors. So, that's that, again, that 20 to 40% that you can make it unique. Now you can do that with heirloom grains. You can do it with different stress techniques. There's a lot of different things that you can employ, but you're going to have to do something to make it unique in this. If you're going to market it in the commercial industry, you're going to have to do something. Now, that could be advertising. You can sell your story. You can sell your lifetime story, how you grew up moonshining as a kid, working for your grandpappy and all this, and that's an excellent story. And you market that into your product. You've got your family recipe. You got to have something more than just a product these days. You got to make it unique. Now, your 20 to 40 makes it unique, and the story that goes along with it will make it unique. And to get in the commercial business, it certainly helps to have one or both. And the more the more both you have, the better. So, it's easier to sell a story than it is an average bourbon. Yeah, I know, man. Yeah, you definitely want to open the top. So anybody that has a still that doesn't have a valve on the top of it, now I don't care if it's pressure relief valve, that doesn't do anything except allow it to vent off if you get too much pressure. A vacuum relief will let air in if the vacuum becomes a certain amount, but I don't want my $2,000 copper 30-gallon whatever you got still depending on a $5 vacuum apparatus that came from China. I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do that. So a half inch or a 3/4 inch ball valve on top. When you're done, open that valve up. It doesn't matter if a little bit of the steam comes out. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to kill you. I wouldn't do it around the flames. It's not going to be that bad. If it is, you can get one that's got it's got a barbed for hoses, and you can hose it away if it's a big concern. You can hose it out the window if you're inside, or if you're outside and it's windy, it's not a big deal or concern. If you're inside and closed, if it's a concern, you can pipe it out somewhere or the other. But you definitely want to have something that opens it up. And if you do pipe it out, make sure that it's up. Don't let it loop and get a little water in the middle, because you defeated the purpose, right? But have that valve. Seriously, have that valve that you can open up when you're done. Shut the heat off first. Shut the gas off. No open flames, and immediately open up that valve, and you'll be good. Yeah, and you can, but that tri-clamps is 200 degrees, right? I mean, that metal, you definitely want to have your grill gloves on or some gloves on if you're wanting to undo your tri-clamps or lift your top up, because it's 200 degrees. It's going to be 195, 200 degrees, because it's going to be as hot as the vapor that was in it. So, yeah, it's going to be hot. So I've been running, hey, Bennett. Been running 1 pound of sugar per gallon on pot and worm. Would a whiskey head increase my starting proof any? I feel like, yeah, it would create some, reflux. So putting a whiskey head on there will definitely give you some more reflux, just like a column. You can put a deflegmator on there, deflamator on there to create some reflux. So anything that creates reflux will give you some passive reflux or active reflux. Passive being a large head, or active would be putting cold water on it, or a cold towel, or having an active deflegmator with cold water. It's basically a condenser that's in line, right? Like a shotgun condenser. It's a deflamator. It's basically like a shotgun condenser, but it's in line, and it's not part of the condensing thing. It dropped, it all goes back into the steel, so it's a reflux. That's what a deflamator basically is. So anything that creates reflux is going to increase your proof. I will say another thing that will increase your proof is going a little bit more than a pound per gallon. If you use your hydrometer, like we talk about using your hydrometer, a pound per gallon is going to start you at probably around a 1040, maybe a 1045 range. 2 pounds is, I think, 1080, maybe plus a little bit, maybe 1085. So about 1.5 pounds to 1.75 pounds per gallon should get you about a 106070, which won't be too hot, but will increase your production just a little bit. I would also say save your tails. Don't quit. A lot of times when people get into their tails at 80 or 90 proof, they cut off the steel. Climb in the tails. It doesn't taste good. Turn it off. And they just dump it. And that's 80 proof alcohol that you're dumping. That's what is normally in a vodka bottle, right? 80 proof Tvarsky. I mean, that's just that's 80 proof bottle of alcohol you're throwing away. That's that volume in your still is 80 proof. So you've got X amount of gallons of 80 proof alcohol you're throwing away. Think about that. And once you think about that, you're thinking, damn, I'm throwing a lot of alcohol away. And you are, and the people throw tons of alcohol away when they throw those tails out. That alcohol is so easy to get out of those tails without affecting flavor, because all that mustiness in the tails is so easily overcome. Much, much, much easier overcome than acetone, right? and four shots and heads and all the acetone and ethyl acetates and acetaldehydes and all that shit. Much easier to get that mustiness out of the tails, the oiliness out of those tails, than it is some of those higher volatiles that are in your heads and fours. So um, definitely, it would increase it. So using those tails will increase your production, and it will increase your proof a little bit too, but run it all the way down. So run it down to 10 or 20. If you're using gas, maybe 30 or 40, but at least get that extra bit out of it. And then right the next time when you're ready to run, take that jar or bucket or whatever you got of tails and dump that into your still and mix it with your mash. You'll be required to mash less, right, to make that run, and it'll be so much higher. So instead of that 12% ABV mash, you now just put 40 proof in on that, right? So you got like 40 or 50 proof mash. That's like 4 times the alcohol that you're normally going to get, and it's not going to be all tails. So you get a little bit more fours off. You have to learn to make your cuts, but you're going to get a lot more hearts out of it, and you will be amazed at the production increase that you get. So definitely save those tails, man. It's such a waste, because think about that. You got X amount of gallons of 80 proof alcohol, because that's what's coming off, and that's what is in there. That's what you're distilling off. So you got a lot of potential. You got a lot of alcohol in there to get off. Yeah, I agree. It's a lot easier to do that than run a thumper. The thumper is kind of a complex thing. It has to be sized properly. You need a drain in it, but it is good. It's a good tool for beginners. Not so great, but once you get used to it, it's a great place to put those tails I was talking about. And not fill it. You don't fill it up right with tails and then run it, because you put little by little in, and halfway through you can dump it out and add more if you want to. Um, but you'll get a lot more production that way. But yeah, you have to size your thumpers properly, and I think it helps a lot to have a drain in them as well. That way, when you're if you're infusing flavor, if you're putting tails in it, after a certain point, all that alcohol gets pretty much boiled out, and it's just basically water. It gets, or very diluted alcohol. You can drain that out and then infuse some more of your tails in there and keep it going, especially like stripping. If you're stripping, you can add that and strip out a lot of those tails too, and increase a lot of your production and strip those out. So it helps a lot. Back in the saddle again, baby. Good to hear it, man. Good to hear it. Things warming up a little bit down there. Aren't they? Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice day today. Gonna get a little bit colder this week, I think. We got the 60s a couple of days. It's helped melt some of the ice, but my swimming pool, man, it's still, you can skate on it. Let's see, what are we doing this week on weather? I know it got a little cooler today because my head started hurting. Went from 58 to 40 some. Yeah. But this week in the 60s, yeah, that's awesome, man. So it's time for brandy. Yeah. And inside temperatures, when you do it inside your house and your house temperature is in the low to mid 70s, that's perfect. And in your basement, as I got a basement, so that's perfect wine making temps, man. That's where you want it. So that's good. And a good storage for your wine too. No, no, putting fruit on wood is not going to. Oh, like apple wood is not going to impart an apple flavor. No, nope. But it will. If you char it and use it, a lot of people do use that for char. For flavoring, but it's not going to be the same flavor as apple. It's not going to be appley, but it will be a different flavor than an oak would give you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And and it's fine for most cooking still, but I don't know. I've seen a lot of really, really brilliant scientists argue back and forth on that, and I don't know near what they do, but they're arguing back and forth about it. And I'm not sure which side's right about it, but I think about it, and it's like, is it really worth it? Stainless is pretty cheap these days. I've got some big ass old pots from my grandmother, right? She used to run a soup kitchen. She used to work in the food industry. And I got some big ass aluminum pot, 10, 20 gallon pots that I use for boiling. But um, after hearing the scientists argue back and forth over it, and they're all brilliant, and they're not even proof really out there that proves that the aluminum ion causes the Alzheimer's and stuff. But there's a question, and it might. And for me, that's enough just to say I'm not going to take a chance, right? I don't know as much as they do. I know a little bit about science, but I don't know as much as they do. I do see how it leaches out, and I do see what you're talking about. And there's certain types of aluminum pots, especially the more modern stuff, a little different than those old ones that my grandparents had. But I'm not going to take the chance, and I have stainless and I have aluminum. I got aluminum turkey fryer. It makes just fine turkey, but it doesn't get acidic. It's in oil, so I don't worry about it. But would I ferment on it? No. Would I use it for distilling? No. But would I use it for boiling and cooking things that weren't acidic? All day long, So, that's where I stand on it. But if it's cooking, like tomato paste or anything acidic or anything like that, I just not going to chance it. I've got stainless pots, but that's my thoughts on the aluminum. I don't know one way or the other. I wish I knew for a fact, but even the scientists and doctors can't agree. So, I just say if there's a chance it could cause Alzheimer's, I'm not going to, because that kind of is a genetic trace, is dementia and Alzheimer's and all that stuff. So Parkinson's and things. So I mean, there's going to be a day and time when I was saying I'll be, slobbering, and I won't be able to complete a sentence. And by the time if I live that long, because it happens to a lot of people in my family, and I can see some of my memory fading. It's, like remembering that Oaxacan green. I couldn't remember that, and there's a lot of other things that I have to re-educate myself on. I have to re-educate myself on a lot of things. So when I talk about learning with y'all, I'm relearning a lot that I already knew, right? But yeah, I'm just not going to take any chances with the aluminum because of that, and because I just can't. Because if it makes it worse, I definitely don't want it. Yeah, yeah. But it's interesting how they do that, isn't it? Turkeys and chickens and all kinds of shit, man. That's crazy. They do that in those dunder pits too. They'll throw animals in there, just give it little characters. Like, and I mean, they ain't gutting them either. They just throwing in the whole damn animal. It's crazy. No, no. Well, yeah, they just boil them off, man. Nah. Have you ever seen those little tumblers that they put those chickens in to take the feathers off with the little rubber hoses that pelt them? That's pretty crazy, and it pretty wild. I didn't know that's how they did it. But now we did it growing up. Yeah. Yeah. Choke that thing before you use it. Hell yeah. No problem. Anytime. Now that's why we're here, brother. Bring your questions, and if you want some recipes, jump in the Moonshine Militia and DIY Shine and Steel Building. It's a group I have on Facebook. Me and Eric Ayers have on there. I'm trying to add new recipes in there, but we've got a Stampede steel recipe from back in the old days that they used to hand out with all the steels they had handed. And we got that in there. That's got a couple hundred recipes in there. This is interesting. They're decent recipes. And I'm trying to add more and more, but I've got to go through them because a lot of people have taken old recipes, copied and pasted them, and put their little watermark with it. So I don't want to violate anybody's copyright, even though they copied it off somebody else. So I'll have to do the same that they did, copy and paste it, just get the text, eliminate their little watermark that they got to try to make it their own. There's a lot of that going on. I know several of the people that were behind a lot of that. So anyway, so we're trying to, and get some unique ones too from the wine community to make brandies and good wines they don't care if you share them or not. They don't try to stamp them and put their name on it and try to be somebody. That's get a lot of that. But so we're trying to increase those all the time. But there's quite a few in there, and if you try one and it doesn't work well, there's something about it. Make a note and we'll jump in there and say, I did this and I didn't get a very good gravity. Can you check it out? We'll check it and see what kind of gravity we get, kind of imitating the same, and because we can't try them all, there's just so many, but yeah, we'll try to, put them in there, and we're here to answer questions. And in the groups, we answer a lot of questions too. So yeah, jump in there and join it up. Also, I don't usually say this, but I need to get my DIY podcast page up, and I've got 300 some members in there, followers. I need to get it above 500, and it'll help us with the shares on Facebook. It'll increase the shares I'm able to do. So I am going to shamelessly put my link to that group out there. I don't ever do this, but I do need those numbers up, and that way I'll get to be able to share it more. But it's not a web page where you ask questions or anything like that, where it's not active. It's just, I need you just to follow it. We don't post stuff in there. That's a separate page entirely. You can do that in the DIY Shine and Steel Building page. You can do it in the Militia page. This, I just need a bunch of followers to help my numbers so I can get the ability to share it to more places. So I'm going to post that now. So just go to that page and hit that. I think you have to hit the three little dots and follow. I'm not sure if just hitting the like button will do it. You may have to follow. But I need to increase my followers. I got 338, and I need to get that to over 500. And again, the only thing that will ever be posted in here are the Militia podcasts, mine, and some of the stuff that Damon does gets posted in there as well. I haven't seen Lisa's in there's any much, but we try to keep it to just shine related topics. So if it's alcohol, talking about the alcohol industry, talking about alcohol making, whatever, as long as it's something to do with alcohol, taxation of alcohol, whatever, the legalization of it, anything to do with alcohol at all, we try to include this page. But we want to try to keep it alcohol related and educational. So, yeah, you'll get a notification as well when we go live. And it'll be just another way for you to get that notification, because sometimes people don't get them. YouTube's really good about sending the notifications out. Facebook isn't. And also, if you do get notifications and it starts aggravating you, oh my God, I'm getting these all the time now. Don't leave us. Just go in there and hit that little button, and you can turn off notifications. So it won't notify you anymore, but you'll still be a follower, and we can get the benefit of that. And I can share it to more places, and I won't be so grumpy that I have to stop halfway through it. So help me out if you can. If not, I understand. But if you don't want the notifications, just go ahead and follow and just open it up and just turn off notifications. And and Facebook won't bother you. But they're not real good about doing that anyway. But if it bothers you, don't leave me. Just turn off notifications. Yeah, it's great for boiled pots. I do too. I've got those. I'd be lost without them. I mean, I got two big ass pots, and I'll get them both going, man. And I use my little 30-gallon one, or my big 30-gallon one as well. So I mean, once you start using the big fermenters, hot water becomes the issue. So any big pot that you can have going to boil water in to steep, you're going to be using it. So, it's just like, the little Russian tea dolls that stack into each other. So you'll have like 10 pots, and you'll start out pulling out a small one, a bigger one, bigger one, bigger one. You'll have, I store them all inside each other, right? Like the little Russian tea dolls. That's pretty funny. But yeah, that's the big limitation is how big a pot you can have to, and a lot of people use their steel, for the boiling the water too. So you use every pot you got. Some people, that steel is the biggest pot they got. You got a 30-gallon steel, it's likely your biggest pot. So use what you got. Yeah, I use staves. And they're great for smokers. Awesome idea. Now, another thing you can do, if you have one of them old planes or a sand belt that you don't care about anymore, you can sand down that char or scrape that char off and rechar that wood. It's good and thick. Those staves are like that thick. That's what, 3 inches. So they're good and thick, and you can shave all that char off and rechar it and try, but it's not gonna be as effective. But you can do that a time or two and sand it down, plane it. If you want to run it through a planer, it's got a little bow to it, so that's not gonna work out real well for you. But yeah, you can rechar them. Get your propane torch. The side that comes on the outside of the barrel that's kind of grayed, I just sand that down and belt sand it and get my propane torch out. I'll char the shit out of it. Alligator, make it look like an alligator back. Yeah, they're good in the smoker. They work great. And that's what, the Jack Daniels, that's how their chips are made for, they use those. That's what they use their old barrels for, especially the ones that can't be used a second time that kind of fall apart and stuff or have damage or leaks. They break them up, and that's what they use them for. Yeah, I've heard the same. So, I stay away from it because it's dementia and Alzheimer's and all that is something my sister died from it. My dad's in his 80s. He has it, and chances are I'm going to get it too. And, that's why every time I can't remember something, I spaz out. Yep. Same. It's tough. Yeah, and you're thinking of the word. The word is just funnel. A few months ago, I couldn't fucking come up with the word funnel. I mean, just simple shit. And here I can talk about EC1118 is, the scientific name for that, but I can't think of a fucking funnel. Are you kidding me? And that's just, I don't know if that's just old age sneaking in and it just happens, or if it's actually that, and it's kind of freaks you out when you have that hereditary, and you're just like, oh God, it's coming on, Elizabeth. What am I going to do? Yeah. To the other groups, let me share that first link first. That is just to the podcast page. So go to that page and just, like it. Don't have to beg to join or anything, just like it and follow it. It's just a regular page. But the other page is called DIY Shine and Steel Building. And let me open up that page. And the Moonshine Militia page, of course. And again, if you join the Moonshine Militia, just tell them that you come from Old Santa's podcast and the Moonshine Network. It's how you heard about us from the Moonshine Network, and we'll get you in there. We just try to limit the people that come in to who we know and we can trust, and hopefully we probably have law dogs already in there. They're gonna create fake profiles and be in there, but just don't broadcast selling it. If you sell it, that's fine. Do what you want to do. We're not here to judge anybody, but don't mention it in the groups. Not only because it'll get our pages banned or in trouble, it'll get you in trouble as well. But ATF and other police, they're in every group. I'm sure. It's a lot of groups are public. Some groups are private. They're creating false accounts. They're getting accounts from people, who knows who. But yeah, so just be cautious, and it's okay to talk about it. And the DIY Shine and Steel Building page, you can be there anonymously. You can create a nickname for it. Facebook's created that so you can post and do things anonymously in there. You don't have to use your full name. You can just create a nickname and use it, and that's cool too. We made that. But if you just Google DIY, or not Google, but do a Facebook search for DIY Shine and Steel Building, and I'll post a link to that here in a minute. But I don't want to post back-to-back links, so people get confused between the podcast page, which I need, and this one. So I'll post it here in just a little bit. Right, JJ. Yeah, and aerosol. There's a lot of aerosol aluminums, and a lot of people, talking about how they're using that to seed clouds and stuff and spraying it from planes. I don't know about all that. I often thought it's conspiracy, but I've seen some evidence that might suggest otherwise, and I don't know. I'm not saying either way. I don't want to sound kooky, but it's possible. So if they're using aerosolized aluminum, then yeah, I mean that could be, everybody could be getting it. Right. Yeah. Yeah, it sure can. Yeah, we don't run a grumpy Santa. Some people seen the grumpy side of me, and it's not pretty. But usually somebody has to do something. I'm just not grumpy by nature. Usually somebody, I don't wake up grumpy, or I'm not just grumpy. I'm usually pretty jovial and laugh a lot. But say something or do something piss me off, and yeah, I can be an ass. I can sure be a dick. There ain't no doubt about that. But you have to get it out of me. You usually have to comment or say something that pissed me off or do something. I'm just not that way. Normally. Hello, Miss Lisa. 10:30. I'm 10:34. Damn, I'm getting caught up. Hooray. Good. Right. And different people can handle those differently. I agree. Yeah, well, I just lost a sister to dementia, and it happened pretty fast, JJ. I mean, within 5 6 years, she went from speaking normally like I am right now to dead from frontal temporal dementia. Um, Same thing Bruce Willis has, and I watched her decline, and it's was quite rapid. And my dad's is a little slower, and he doesn't talk a lot, so it's hard to gauge how much you know cognitive abilities he's lost because he just doesn't talk a lot. Because I think he's ashamed. When you get old, I think he's always been a very extremely intelligent person, and when you're at that level of intellect, and then all of a sudden you start losing it really has an impact on you, and it's having an impact on me. And it really is depressive because you're going from a genius to an idiot, right? And that's hard to take. So he doesn't talk a lot, and but my sister did, and it was quite apparent. It's she would just when she'd go to the doctors, and they would just say, "Well, we need to test and see what level you are," and she'd just start talking, and it was just disconjointed words and just random words. I mean, if you try to talk that way, you couldn't. It's very difficult. Um, so it was just like vegetable soup of words coming out. It just they didn't work together. And it was quite rapid. And her decline was pretty severe and fast. So yeah, it kind of freaked me out to see her go from normal like I am now to 6 years from now dying. Yeah, it's pretty quick. She's such an awesome person too. Yeah, yeah, we've got ADHD for sure. Yep, yep, it definitely does. Yeah, and I've got friends with it, that have been diagnosed. I've never been diagnosed with it, but based on everything that I've talked to, everybody that's got it, they're like, "You're a classic ADHD, man. You're just like the personification of it. You're ADHD, ADD. Your picture should be in the encyclopedia next to it, right? It's just very, very everything all about my whole past and everything is definitely awesome. Yeah, yeah. They blackberry wine. It's good. Makes a damn good wine and a really good brandy. Grandfather, not daughter. All right, all right. Well, grandfather. Hey, yeah, I was thinking that's pretty cool, man. Having your granddaughter cooking, that's awesome. New school, not old school. But yeah, I understand, bro. Yeah, that's that autocorrect for you. Clint has to deal with that all the time. But yeah, blackberry makes a good brandy, and if you learn how to infuse those flavors, but most of my blackberry wine stays as a wine because it's so flavorful. It's so much more flavorful as a wine. It's just hard for me to, especially a good elderberry blackberry or that pineapple blackberry was awful damn good. So the combinations work. Um, it made a good shine though. That blackberry and pineapple made a good combo shine. It did. I've still got some more of it in there, and it's pretty good. It doesn't taste like either, but it's got a good taste. Yeah, yeah. You start, when things like that happen to you and you have it in your family tree, of course, just typical memory things. Oh, that happens when you start to get older. You can't think of words, and can't speak as eloquently as you used to, and you get stuck and I think some people recover from it better than others. Me, I'm like a deer in headlights. I'm like, what's that word? I got to think of that word instead of just talking yourself around it and just keep on talking like a silver tongue orator. I'm all deer in headlights. What's that word? I got to think of that word. And I'm on Google finding the word, it drives me crazy. So, yeah, people handle it different ways. But, I hope it's just, getting old and I don't want to. I know I'm going to get it, but I hope I can put it off for another 20, 25 years like my dad's, it helped happen in my late 80s, when Ann's changing my diapers or something, it'll be all right then. She's already promised she'll take care of me no matter what. So I got a good woman. That's funny. You come into this world in diapers and you go out in diapers. Ain't that a shame? Man, I tell you. Cobbler, yeah, I'm telling you, make a jam too. We make the blackberry jam. We make the cobbler. Uh, we'll make the wine, and every once in a while I'll distill some of it, But that's only after it starts to age a little bit. I've got some in there. I'll probably distill soon. It's just not as good as the wine anymore. Like I said, a lot of the fruits, they're good for a year or two, but they're not like grapes. Not all fruits are like grapes that just keep getting better over time. Not all your fruits will do that, right? Plums, my plum wine, this is great, but 3 or 4 year old plum wine, no, it's not so great. So that becomes Slivovich. Hey, brother, I'm here for the next month or two. You ain't learned it all yet, have you? Shit, brother. And hey, as you learn some things, maybe you can share it. Maybe you can help educate me on some things. I look forward to it. Am I frozen? Uh-oh. Somebody say something. Am I locked up? Are we still going? Are we live? Let me check my internet, make sure my internet's still working. All right, my internet's still working. I just pulled up, click something, and North Georgia pops up. I think it's from that page I was looking at, Heirloom Corners. What it was. Yeah, that's what it was. They're in that list. They're Oaxacan green. All right, you freaked me out. Yeah, they do. There's some rabbit holes. You can definitely go down the rabbit hole, and that's always been me. I always wanted to know down to the atom what made everything work and tick. And distilling, and I've learned a lot from it. But as time goes, I've forgotten a lot too. So I have to keep re-educating myself, keep learning and relearning, and that's why we're all here to learn and relearn. All right, well, it's about 10:44. It's getting a little bit slow. It's a Saturday night, and I reckon y'all got a little more drinking to do and swarping. Maybe it's Valentine's Day. You need to go give that old lady a little hug or a little tuck in. But yeah, we're all learning. I mean, hell, it's Clint and I. We learn from you guys all the time. We're learning together. No, I didn't hear about that. Sick of blackberries. Lord have mercy. I love me some blackberries, man, especially jam and cobbler. I guess if you eat them all the time, it would. Wait a minute. What's going on, Jadel? J-Dale? Might bring mead. Sounds awesome. Yeah, it's so hard when you make something that tastes that good. I mean, who could put that in a still and lose, 60, 70% or 80% of that flavor? It's just like some of my wines, it's like a mead, I just can't bring myself to do it. I'll bottle that shit up, and if I don't drink it in the next year or two, then I okay. I'll put a date on my wine bottles, and after a couple of few years, if I haven't had a chance to drink it or share it with a friend, then yeah, I'll pop the cork and start dumping them. I'm about to do that with some old plum that's about 3 years old. But I've been making wine for, I don't know, close to, I don't know, 10 years now. So I've got some old grape wine and cherry wine that's still really good. Um, and the grape wine seems to just doesn't degrade the way I'm storing it. I guess my basement, cool temperatures, dark place. Um, but yeah, hopefully I don't, JJ. Hopefully I don't. It's you know kind of hereditary. I do have family members that wasn't affected, so we'll just have to see. But most of my family is all the same way, just shooting stars, very bright, intelligent, super smart. Most everybody in my family, my mom, my dad, my sisters, all of them, my stepbrother or my half brother, just very brilliant, smart, and then just start burning out like a big bright star does. It's just sad to see, but uh, it's what happens. Part of aging, I guess. Hopefully, it's just old age and not the dementia. We'll know, I guess. Time will tell. If you don't see my podcast kind of trail off and, just get on there and kind of slobber and drill a little bit and say a bunch of gibberish, that'll probably be about the end of the podcasting days for JJ. But everybody, I appreciate y'all tuning in. I don't want to end on a depressing note like that, but it kind of sucks thinking about it. But hey, it happens, man. I've had a good life. If I had to die tomorrow, I lived a good life and I've enjoyed it, and y'all bring a lot of joy to my life. So that's what I have looked forward to for the rest of my life, is hanging out with you guys and sharing my experiences and my knowledge, and hopefully you'll pass it on after I'm gone. Yeah, I love blackberry wine. I quit smoking everything. I quit smoking cigarettes long ago, and weed not so long ago, but I've given it all up. I just the weed thing was just causing issues with my breathing, and I was a cigarette smoker for many years. I started about the same time I started distilling when I was a child, and so I had to give that up, and I don't drink as much as I used to. I've slowed down on the drinking. I'll sit here and drink with you all and drink some shots and have a few drinks, but I'm not like I used to be, where I just I couldn't stop till that jar was gone, and then I'm looking for others before I pass out. It's those days are long gone. I was in my 20s and early 30s. I did that stupid shit, um, but yeah, it's I've given pretty much most all that stuff up. I might eat a gummy if I can find one that doesn't make me sick and nauseous, but smoking not only affected my breath, but started making me feel nauseous and making me feel bad. So it's just like, if it doesn't make you feel good, you don't want to do it, right? What's the purpose? It's the whole purpose in smoking was to relax me and make me feel good, and give me Chinese eyes, make me hungry, thirsty, and happy. And I just quit doing that. It started making my stomach hurt, making me a little nauseous. And I'm thinking it's probably the the new marijuanas that come out and all the chemical composition is how it's changed and the percentages and how it's gotten stronger. But it's definitely the stronger stuff I just can't deal with. The old weak stuff, it's not so bad, but yeah, it could be that too. I appreciate it, brother. I do. And I still play my games. I got my video games to try to keep my mind active and keep my reflexes up and thinking, and always thinking and doing stuff and having to, you know, problem solve and stuff like that. So I have my video games help with that a lot too. It keeps my mind going. And I've never been able to sleep well because I've never been able to shut my mind off. It just keeps going. And even when I try to lay down and sleep, my mind's thinking, and it's always been kind of an insomniac because of it was hard for me to turn that off. And a lot of people probably have the same things, dealing with the same shit. But it's just, no matter what the topic, I just sit and think and try to, and eventually I'll drift off, but I'll just sit in bed and stare at the ceiling and think. But anyway, appreciate y'all being here on a good Saturday. Valentine's Day. Again, go give your sweethearts a little love and kiss and tell them old Santa loves them. And I guess we'll see you Tuesday. Let me see what day that's going to be. The 17th. And until then, I hope everybody has a great rest of your week. And we will see you guys and gals on the 17th, 8 Eastern. Until then, shine on, peace out. Have a great weekend, and we'll see y'all then. Love you. Appreciate you.